Saturday, May 1st. Happy holidays to those who are celebrating. May 1st, 2021. I'm Steven Sersky. This is episode 24 of my podcast. Thanks for joining me. Today, I sat down with Father Jay Korban, who I've known my entire life, basically. We used to go to school together, same parish as well. Don't let that put you off. This is a conversation you want to listen to. He is a young priest, newly ordained, graduated from the seminary just a couple of years ago, and is now in Rossburn, Manitoba, Canada. And today, I asked him to come onto the podcast to talk about his journey to becoming a Catholic priest, a Ukrainian Catholic priest, in this day and age. And I'm sure a lot of you out there have the same question, and would be very interested in hearing a priest, a man of faith, talk openly, candidly about life as a priest and as a practitioner of the Word of God. So today, Father Jay Korban is my guest, and we talked a lot about. We reminisced about Winnipeg and about what life is like in Canada, the differences between Winnipeg and then our schooling and travels, adventures overseas. I'm not sure. Sorry, he never said he went overseas, but he went to Ottawa. He's traveled around Canada quite a bit. But as a newly ordained priest, he is living in small town Canada, 500 people. So his life there and my life here in Beijing, China, obviously very different. But we connected today and we sat down for quite a while. But I think this is a good conversation. And I think you need to listen to the whole episode this time, because if you don't, you're probably going to miss something, ranging from, what it's like to go through the seminary to what some of the day-to-day requirements or the obligations of a priest. But then also what it's like, what makes a priest laugh? How does a priest unwind after a day of, as they call it, work? And then, of course, some burning questions that I've had over my life and that I've sort of thrown at various people who say that they identify as Christian or Catholic in my travels. Of all, I would ask, what if God was an alien? So we do talk a little bit about that as well. So I think this is a fantastic conversation. You guys are going to enjoy it. Listen to the whole thing. And yeah, get in touch with me if you have any issues or any comments afterwards. All right. Here is Father Jay Korban.
Hey,
How's it going?
good. How are you?
Fantastic. Good. Good to see you.
Good. You too. You too. So nice to see anyone these days.
Is you're living now not in Winnipeg? You're up north, ish.
Uh, yeah, we're up north. So anything past Dauphin is
Up
extreme
north.
north, but
Yeah.
we're actually more west, if anything. We're in Rossburn, which is about 45 minutes east of the Saskatchewan border,
Okay.
kind of along Highway. So
Hmm.
we're on the. If you look at Riding Mountain National Park, Dauphin's in the one corner, we're to the opposite corner. So
Okay. Okay. So then,
yeah,
are you guys? How's the town handling this current pandemic?
uh, they're pretty good. It's a small town of 500, so there's not much going on here. But
500. Wow. I think there's that many
yeah,
people in my tower in my apartment.
yeah, probably. I wouldn't be surprised. It's. I mean, we do expand kind of far beyond the town limits here because I mean it's a big farming community.
Yeah.
So we do kind of spread out that way, but yeah, no, the town itself, it's a good community. There's a few small shops. We have two Chinese food restaurants, which is always key to any small town like this. But yeah, no, everything's been going great so far. It just with being kind of in these lockdown situations, we haven't been able to really get together with people.
Yeah.
My oldest Ben, he's in nursery school. He goes to kindergarten next year, and like he sees his friends and stuff, but we haven't really been able to get together with parents or other families and things like that to whatever hang out or play in the backyard or something like that, because
Really?
so it's been difficult that way. But I'm waiting. I'm anxiously waiting for things to open up and we can do more and stuff like that. So,
I don't know.
but yeah.
The kids out here are playing, but they go outside and play a lot. This weekend we have it's the Labor Day weekend here in China.
Oh, okay.
But all the kids are outside. I mean, usually you see them outside around 4:30 after school's out.
Okay.
But I mean, the grandmas are carrying the babies around all day, sort of thing. But yeah, 4:30 is when
Right.
it's like the children of the compound are like unleashed, and it's
Nice.
it's chaos for about a while, and then I mean, they're farther away from my apartment, so I can't really hear them.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's they're ripping around on their bikes and stuff like that. So I mean, there's not
Yeah.
really much
Yeah.
by way of lockdowns, and the kindergarten, everything's open basically now. I mean, there's every now and
Right.
then there's like a
Right.
flare up or something, but
Yeah.
nothing,
And
nothing like what I
ours
hear.
is, yeah, it's a little different here. I mean, we still kind of have that. We live right across the street from the elementary school,
Mhm.
and they have a huge open playground with a giant play structure and everything. And yeah, especially on weekends, or you can tell when it's like a Friday or something like that. The kids do come. They bike, especially now that the weather's getting better. They do come out and they still play and everything. And I mean, some parents do, like, we can still kind of gather at those places. So I mean, that's why we're really looking forward to summer right now, because we hope to get to do some of those types of gatherings, but it's the personal residence stuff. We can't get together in our own backyard and have people over for a bonfire or something like that, or even go to a restaurant with people. Right now I know it's kind of weird, and there's been mixed emotions. There's a lot of complaints, but I'm one of those people that I follow, and hopefully we get it over with sooner.
But it's 500 people. I mean, everybody lives across from each other. Everybody like sees each other all the time, don't they? I mean,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
how does a lockdown work in a town of 500 people?
Well, off the record, it doesn't always stop people. I will put it that way. I know, especially at Christmas and stuff, when we were actually in a complete lockdown type of thing, there were still people occasionally getting together, especially over the holidays, especially out on farms. There's the policing out there is kind of limited and stuff, so
Because they
you can
can't.
kind of
It's farmland.
exactly
How do you
exactly
police farmland?
exactly. So it's and stuff like that. So, but I mean, here, like I said, we don't. Our closest family is 3 hours away,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So that made it difficult for us. They couldn't always come out and things like that. But I mean, yeah, there are definitely mixed emotions. I definitely have people who are totally like whatever, they don't care type of thing, or they think, not that they think it's a hoax, but they think it's kind of blown out of proportion. But then there are also those who are very on top of things and following things to a keys. So. Yeah.
I'm of the opinion that I think things have been blown out of proportion a little bit, and yeah,
Fair.
it's something that I think has been made a big deal of for any number of reasons. I don't know. I mean,
Right.
my biggest suspicion is because Trump was in office. That was sort of my big conspiracy theory last year.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, I don't know. I've heard rumor or conspiracies that it's all the doing, or it's being encouraged, or not discouraged, I should say. It's not being discouraged by the large the vaccine companies like Pfizer and all those guys.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the latest sort of alternative idea that I've heard. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
maybe, I guess. How do you ever verify these things? But yeah, I mean, I don't know. When do you think this is going to be over? I mean, because you actually deal with a congregation, so
Yeah.
what's the
Yeah.
timeline?
Well,
What do you
and
think?
that I really don't have, for it to be completely gone. I have no idea. I think that could take a few years and stuff like that. For us to kind of get out from where we are now, I'm hoping in the next few months, because especially in Manitoba, we've been one of the strictest in terms of restrictions and lockdowns and stuff like that. I mean, we haven't had people haven't been able to come into our province without having a mandatory 2-week quarantine for, well, probably half a year now.
Really?
So
Whoa.
yeah, we've been one of the tightest in all of Canada, which has its benefits. I mean, we definitely, it does, you can see that it helps. But now with these other variants and stuff, that's what's kind of starting to hurt us, is that there's other variants that are coming in, and we can't get a hold of it. So I'm hoping the last few weeks they've been really opening up the vaccine type of thing,
Yeah.
and I'm hoping that will help to curb it. If we can get more vaccinated, then it will curb things and we can slowly start to open up again. But I mean, yeah, especially and they break things at the beginning. They broke things down by your health districts.
Yeah.
So out here, we were in the Prairie Mountain district, and they had a huge outbreak in kind of in the summer, mostly in Brandon area, but of course it's the whole area. So we were locked down when I first arrived, but then since then we had been doing really, really good. And it was like Winnipeg that was exploding, and so I said, well, just don't go to Winnipeg, we'll be fine. And but now it's kind of the whole province is again kind of growing in numbers and stuff. And so, like I said, our province has been super strict and trying to beat it ahead of the curve, but
Yeah.
I don't know what my view personally as a pastor and having a parish. I just follow the things because I'm not my own church. I still belong, to the bishop and everything. So whatever I do, it will reflect on the rest of the churches and on the bishop. And as well, just it would be a PR nightmare if small town church goes against orders and stuff like that. And especially out here, we've had churches in and around Winnipeg and Steinbach area and stuff that have been in the news, and so I don't want to risk any of that stuff. It's too big of a deal. So even whether it's real or not, or inflated more than it should be, I'm just, because of the church, I'm just following the rules and doing it. So we get along with everyone. I don't want to put anyone at risk for anything. So.
And that is our
Yeah.
public service announcement. Thank you for listening.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I live in a country wherein I got to toe the line sometimes too. That you can't just be saying whatever you want to say at times.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was, I guess, because there was a community. Who was it? Oh, I can't remember the religious denomination, but it was last year. There was an outbreak just south of Winnipeg.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so they got flack for it because everyone went to a funeral, and I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
remember who it
Yeah.
was, but that was in the news. I mean, that went through my Facebook feed, and everyone's like, "See, well, you should
Yeah.
this and that and another thing." I don't know. Is it? Then I go to work and I take the subway, and it's packed. There are more people on that
Yeah.
subway than travel through Winnipeg on a daily basis. I mean, and
Yeah.
I'm sitting there going, wait a minute. You're telling me that this city of Beijing, 30 million, this subway line doesn't have one person with it when there is a city across the world that is having an outbreak? It's things like this where I
Yeah.
kind of go, I don't know. I think this is out of control a little bit.
Yeah. And that's exactly the thing too, is I mean, right here, that's kind of the big backlash from the people, is because yeah, you have these kind of extremes of scenarios. Right now the biggest thing is that, well, we can have people in our own backyard where we can be separated around a bonfire, but as people are saying, we can sit with three other strangers on a patio at a restaurant and be fine. And it's true. I mean, but there's all these different perspectives. If you come in from that way, strictly speaking, like, yes, okay, it doesn't make sense. But then if you kind of look at it kind of the other way, a restaurant can strictly say, if you're not, I can't have more than four of you or whatever, and they can disperse. You can tell them no. Someone in a backyard, I mean, you could end up filling 30, 40 people in your backyard and no one know. So it's
Yep.
kind of like that perspective too, is like, well, what can be controlled, what can't be controlled, and so
It's very true.
it's really weird. Yeah. So
They were doing that here last year. The restaurants, like where they had separators and they had noses
yeah,
on the door.
yeah.
And there was one pub that I go to, Great Leap Brewing, and they got shut down a few times because, like, it's a popular place. Like a lot, and it's not just with foreigners, but it's like
Right.
people go there all the time. And they got shut down a few times because I guess they just couldn't control how many people were coming in. It was one of the few places that was still open last year. And so, like, the
Wow.
authorities would just come by or someone would report them and they'd get shut down for a week or something.
Yeah.
They're just like, no, unless you, like, we can't let any more than like 30 people in. You have to stay a meter
Right.
apart or we're going to get shut down again. So please
Yeah.
cooperate, sort of thing.
Well, and that was even here. I mean, we had that was kind of the view from servers and stuff and hostesses at these restaurants, is they were kind of deciding to quit because they're like, I don't have it in me to tell people no, or to ask them or judge them on these things. They're like, I'm just whatever, a 18-year-old server. Like, that's not my position, and that's like, no, that's someone else's job, So there was kind of problems with that too, is that restaurants were kind of losing staff because they didn't want to be the bad guys. They didn't want to be the police, And,
Yeah.
Who does want to be that? So
Even the police don't want to be police sometimes because of the current mass media outlash of them as well.
For sure. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, sometimes I wonder, and I was talking to a buddy a couple weeks ago. I wonder if my experience living overseas would be vastly different if social media didn't exist. Because like 30 years ago, when like pre-internet and pre-ubiquitous social media exposure, I mean,
Right.
how would have I ever talked to anybody if there was an outbreak in China? Well, SARS. I mean, back in the early 2000s. I mean, I remember that popping up in the news, but it wasn't as crazy as it is now. But I didn't know anybody in China. I didn't know anyone living overseas. Now, even 1990, when we were in grade school, I mean, how did you talk to people? It was a phone call, usually at some odd time at night. It's like, oh yeah, you're right. That's your old cousin, right? Blah blah blah. But I mean, we weren't as spread out before. We weren't as connected before. Yeah, I sort of wonder. I have my doubts.
That's very true, and it is weird because I mean, us right now, and I've got a friend in Australia that I can text now and everything like that, and I had an aunt in the 90s who lived in Japan at the time.
Oh,
and we have letters from her. That's how she communicated. My sister was her goddaughter, and so she would send gifts occasionally and stuff, and send letters, and we have like the letters with all the stamps and everything on it, but yeah, like that was it, or like you say, maybe the odd phone call, but sometimes that wasn't even an option too, because back then it was like
expensive.
It would have been super expensive to do that, so snail mail was the way to go. But yeah, nowadays it definitely has changed things, and you can communicate with anyone instantly, and stuff like that. So it's kids today. I don't want to be that person with kids today, but
too late. Too late. You have kids. You're married. You have a proper life. I mean, you are that age where you get kids
for
today.
sure. But they're never gonna really understand that. Of what do you mean? Like, with sending a letter? What's that? And what do you mean it took like a week to get there or something like that? It's a reality that they won't ever kind of experience. So,
speaking of taking time to get, I mean, I remember as a kid when you would send away for like, if you like the cereal boxes or something, that they would you'd have to wait 4 to 6 weeks and it was just forever. You'd forget that you even sent away for the thing. Now I realize two things. One, I mean, usually the reason why it took 4 to 6 weeks because they couldn't get your mail for another week and a half. Then they'd have to send the order to China, make the thing, and it was like a per piece order. Like they'd have to export it from China before it actually showed up through the boat that went through Los Angeles onto the bus, onto the train or whatever. I mean, I never understood shipping logistics 30 years ago, but even still, it's like, I mean, it would just take forever. You'd forget that you'd even done something. Nowadays, if you don't get an immediate confirmation through your email, I mean, then it's like, okay, this company doesn't exist to me. You guys are so behind the times.
Yeah, that's a little sketchy that they didn't respond immediately. What's going on?
This must be a scam. And then the worst thing about that whole, like, oh, they sent you a confirmation email. You're like, let me just go check my email. Oh, what's my password? And then you lose 6 hours of your life.
Yeah,
that's where you have to hope that you have a secondary email that you can get into or something. I was actually looking at prices for tickets. Cheapoair.com was the one that I use to like do. It's like Skyscanner, and
Okay.
tickets are stupidly expensive. It's just like anywhere, not just back to Winnipeg, but
Yeah.
I mean, like
Yeah.
to Ukraine, to Japan, to London,
Hmm.
to Toronto. They're all thousands of dollars. I now suspect, I wonder if the era of cheap travel is over. It's done.
Yeah, that's well, I mean, even just regular using your own car. I mean, gas prices over here right now are soared right back up again because of the new carbon tax and stuff. And
Oh yeah.
so I mean, even that is it's getting harder and stuff. And I was talking with a gas attendant one day a couple weeks ago, and I said, worst part is like everyone needs it. Like you're not gonna be one day just wake up and decide, oh well, gas is too high, so I'm gonna walk, to the other side of town to my job or whatever. Like maybe you can take a bus or something like that, but especially out here in rural
Oh
areas,
yeah.
like you don't have that option.
You need a car.
There's no trains anymore. There's no whatever. You need your car and you need to fill it with gas. And so I said some people that is not an option, and that they're just going to keep paying because there's nothing else you can do.
Yeah, no, Canada was built, same with the United States, was built on the idea of roads and cars, personal
Yeah.
sort of automobiles. Does the train even stop in Rossburn now? I know it stops in
No,
Dauphin.
we used to have a line that went through here. It was actually called the Rossburn subdivision.
Right.
But because it was mostly, early 20th century when they started needing supplies and stuff like that. And so it used to come, it branched out from around Neepawa area and then came straight through up to Russell. And I don't know where it went from Russell, but somewhere out there. And but it was closed, I think, in the 90s. And then in the last, I think, 20-ish years or so, which would be the 90s, but somewhere in that range there would be.
Yeah.
Math was always my strong one. No, somewhere in that range, they ended up removing all the railway line and everything, and so now it exists. It's part of the Trans-Canada Trail.
Right.
But it's known as the Rossburn Subdivision Trail, and in the winter, it's heavily used for snowmobiling because it's a great path for that. And
Hopefully
especially
not
with
on the
farmers.
tracks. Hopefully not on the
No,
tracks.
like that's what I'm saying. Like all that stuff has been all removed within those 20
Okay.
years, and so now it's just an empty path. And so they use the snowmobiling a lot in the winter, especially with farmers. I mean, that's a lot of their activity in the winter. And then in the summer, there's a lot of walking and biking and stuff like that. So yeah. So I mean, I could travel from, like I said, all the way from Neepawa all the way straight up to Russell beyond here on that path. But no, the trains have not existed out here for a long time. So it's like I said, if you want to go somewhere, you need a car.
Yeah, it's one of the funny things about living here in Beijing is that I've never bought a car. I have never bought a house. I don't need to, if I keep traveling and if I live in cities like this where I can cycle everywhere. It's just, and there's a subway. I mean, I don't take the subway much anymore, but we have these share bikes, which I know Winnipeg has trialed before during the summer months. But I mean, I don't know. I think Winnipeg could be on the forefront of winter tech. I think it's sorely behind. Sure. I mean, they should get some engineers there, some creative people. Like, this is what you got to do, and make it scalable for a city of that size. But here, I mean, we got share bikes all over the place. It cost me 80 jowl, which is like 20 cents to ride a bike every day.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. I was I was out in Ottawa for a few years, for about 5 years. And Montreal is big on that. They have a lot of that of the shared bikes in Montreal and Quebec and stuff like that. Ottawa, through my time there, they started introducing them.
Yeah.
They did not nearly have as many as somewhere like Montreal and Quebec, but they were starting to be a thing, and that is another, that's a great place for that too. They've got tons of trails, the canal and everything, that they could really benefit from that. But again, it's a place that everyone has a bike anyways, so if anything, it would be more for the tourists and stuff like that. But I mean, yeah, I agree. Winnipeg, I come with a geography background, and I remember doing like city planning and stuff like this, and in university. And one of my biggest things was, I said, Winnipeg, we have our river, and the Riverwalk itself. I mean, as great of an idea as it was a total mess up because I think in the 30 years it's been in existence or whatever, it's been flooded for over half of that,
It's been flooded for 29
And
years.
yeah, exactly.
Collectively speaking.
So I mean, it needs working. My wife is from Saskatoon, and they have a beautiful trail system along the river. They also have a system that the river like rarely ever floods, but
that helps.
It's higher up, and yeah, it helps. But it's higher up, and it's concrete and everything, and it's beautiful. It's a wonderful system there. Whereas ours is it's failed miserably. And I said, if they could fix that, then your summer would be better, and even the winter. And I mean, I know sometimes we have issues with our freezing in the winter and stuff, but I said if you connect that trail through most of the river, there would be so many people that could use it for skating or walking or biking even, because I know winter biking is becoming a big popular thing out here now. And you could use those as ways of transportation to connect, because it goes right to the University of Manitoba, which is to be a huge hub, hop on the river, go down to the school,
And it'd be cool. I mean, it's like the only other place I've traveled by river was in Thailand or in Cambodia. But I mean, it's like, I'm in the middle of Canada. I'm taking a boat, or taking the
Exactly.
river trail. But wait a minute.
Exactly.
What would they have to do to make the trail work in Winnipeg? Like, it floods. I mean, there's shitty water flowing across that sidewalk a lot more times than not. And I don't mean shitty water like it's not poopy. It is poopy. I mean, it's not good. It's not clean water you want to be wading through, sort of thing. I mean, so how would they even address that issue?
Well, I think for summer, if you're wanting to do the trail, I think it means not putting it right along the river. I think you need to either build it up further along the bank, or like where in I think like Jasper or Banff or something, there's those and I think in tons of Asian countries too, they have in like mountainsides, they have those big bridges that go across, or lookout points, that kind of arch around a corner, something like that. Do something like that where it might be kind of elevated more, so that if your flood does rise, then only chance is like an extreme flood where it's like our famous 97 flood or something like that, where for sure it's going to go. But if you can do it elevated enough, then maybe, I don't know, something creative. It
sounds like it's going to cost a lot of money and time.
True, which we tend to not have that. Either we don't have patience and we don't have the money, so it's
I would say that if an idea like that, if that came to China, they would do it, because labor costs here are much lower than in Canada. But in Canada, how much would a laborer get paid to do something like that? It's like $22 an hour. I mean, sure, the government takes their income tax, but I mean, it would be cost prohibitive. The only thing I would ever suggest for Winnipeg to do is make it floatable, and so make it so that just put. And again, an extra cost, like not build a bridge, but like build it on wooden planks. Put those little buoys on there or whatever, the floating devices, and then that way, when it floods or freezes, I mean, it moves with the water. I mean, wouldn't that make more sense?
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know why they haven't done that, but the gravel path that they have was probably the cheapest, most expedient option that they could come up with. But I wish they would do something with it. I mean. It's such a great idea, and
the other thing too is even just in the summer, I said making more use of those boats. I mean, we have the river bus that goes from like 3 points, and it's mostly tourism. Like, make it an actual thing of transportation. Take people down the river somewhere,
make it useful. I tried to take it, and then it was shut down or something, or it came at some odd time. I'm like, who would take this? Like, this isn't convenient. Why? And like, the other thing, like full disclosure, in Thailand, if you were to step on the boat, you would probably go, is this safe? That's going to be your first thought. In Canada, you're not going to ever question if it's safe, because it's been certified safe by who knows how many government organizations. And if there's ever a hint of it being unsafe, you can report, you can sue. I mean, there's more of a legalistic
Yeah.
liability in terms of making something like that happen, other than like in towns like I have a boat, there's water, there's people who want to move, I can do that.
I will take your money. Thank you very much.
Demand, supply, done.
Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's how it basically works. So I mean, if we were in charge of a city, we'd have things working properly. I'll show you how it's done.
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
So you've been around Canada quite a bit then. So you're in Rossburn now. You grew up in Winnipeg. You've been in Ottawa.
Yeah.
Ottawa for 5 years. When were you back? When were you in Ottawa?
So I was there from summer or fall of 2014. And then I finally left in the spring of 2019.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah.
That was basically like when I left for China in 2014, righto. So and you went to Ottawa.
Okay, yeah.
We were in the same neck of the woods then, because I was in Montreal for a month, and I did those share bikes. I was in Ottawa in July of 2014.
Yeah.
I was traveling.
Yeah,
around
I moved
then,
out in about. Yeah, I moved out late August. I drove out there, so
okay.
It was in preparation for the school years, so I had to be there for September. So
right, what was Ottawa like?
I found it to be a pretty awesome place to be. I often told people, I said if I had to live anywhere else other than Winnipeg, because I'm a true diehard Winnipeg fan, regardless of the muddy rivers and the dirty rivers. But I said if I ever had to live anywhere else, Ottawa would be a place to go, because as big as it is, it's very similar in size to Winnipeg.
Yeah.
It is definitely more sprawly. I mean, their actual, I think, city boundaries would be like if Winnipeg were to include all of Selkirk and the West and East St. Paul and Headingley and all those things. If we engulfed all those areas around us, that would be kind of what Ottawa's size is like.
Okay.
But the main core of Ottawa is just like Winnipeg. I mean, yeah, we've got all the politics there, but it's
pretty city.
It's very pretty. There's a lot of history there. Especially we lived actually not too far from the canal itself. And to get to school, I drove along the canal daily to get to my classes. So I mean, yeah, you get some bends there where it's canal on the left side and just a wall of beautiful trees, and especially in the fall, you couldn't get much more beautiful than that. And like I said, the history, you go downtown with Parliament Hill and everything, and there's always something to do, just like Winnipeg. Their summers are full of festivals, not just in Ottawa, but even like the surrounding areas. There's lots to go to and stuff like that. So it reminded me a lot of Winnipeg. It has a lot to offer, a lot of culture and things too. It's a beautiful town or city, and like I said, I do miss it. I wish I could go back for a visit. We've made plans in the past to go when we do have a chance to go back and visit friends and stuff like that. But yeah, I had no complaints being there. It was a wonderful experience, and the people that at least the community that we were in, was a very welcoming community, and just the right size. It wasn't too big that you felt small, but at the same time, it wasn't like this tiny little thing like a town of 500. But it was good. It was good. The community was wonderful and very diverse as well. So
when I go to Ottawa, it's a pretty city. It's very good. It is very lucky because it's in that corridor. First of all, their winters aren't as bad as Winnipeg. They might complain about it, but they're not. Number two,
I was going to say, depends who you ask.
Well, ask any Winnipegger who's gone to Ottawa in the winter. Like, this is not cold. I mean, this is
exactly.
This is spring here. But they're also in that corridor where you can go to like Montreal. You can go across the border pretty quick because it's Gatineau. That's right beside Ottawa.
Yeah.
Right? Yep. And the only beautiful thing about that is that Quebec, the province of Quebec, has its own legal system within the larger Canadian legal system. Right. So there's like alcohol for sale, and like there's other things you can buy in Montreal, in Quebec, the province of Quebec, that you can't get readily in Ottawa. I remember making beer runs because it was cheaper in Quebec. rather than
cheaper, and
yes.
and you can get it at a corner store. You don't
Yeah.
have to go to an LC or something. You can get it right at the corner store.
Yeah, so we would drive
Great.
35 minutes to go to the corner store and come back, which
Yep.
would, well, whatever. But I mean, the other thing with Ottawa, it does. I remember one friend. This was years ago. She worked with a lot of impoverished people, and she was like, "Yeah, Ottawa has clean parks. There's no needles around the place." That comment has always stuck with me, because as you move further west, you start looking around, and I've seen images from Dauphin recently. I'm like, "Oh man, there's some unseemly things happening sometimes." But I remember that being an issue. Like, Ottawa takes care of its parks; it's very pretty. The only thing about Ottawa, every time I go there, this is where I start respecting like the Western Canadian viewpoint of politics, because it takes you 36 hours by bus to get from Winnipeg to Toronto, another 6 hours to Ottawa. That's 18 hours. Imagine if it was on horseback or train, whatever, and you're going, this guy 20 hours away from me is telling me how to do my job across the country. I don't know. That even in the play of airplanes, I mean, you can't take a direct flight from Ottawa to a lot of Western Canada. It's only to the major cities. So.
Right.
Yeah, but every time I go, I sort of appreciate, like, that's why the West is very different politically than the East.
Yeah, very, very true, very true, and yeah, you do experience that, because it is. I mean, even though we do have our big cities out west here, Edmonton and Calgary and stuff like that,
and Regina. Let's not forget Regina and Saskatoon. Okay. For sure. Let's not forget the prairies.
But it's living in a town or in a city like Toronto. Versus somewhere out here out west, it's total different experience. The lifestyle, the experiences that you have, totally different, and it is. Like I said, I loved being in Ottawa, but being a very proud Winnipegger, I took any opportunity to flaunt that and to boost the prairies. It wasn't just Winnipeg; it was the whole prairies and everything, and because it is. I mean, it's a beautiful place to live out here, and I've been loving it. I've been here 8 months now, and every day is just as beautiful as the next, because it's you get these sunsets over the nice large horizons that you can't get in a big city, and the farm country and stuff like that. Everything's beautiful out here, and I'm close to Riding Mountain National Park, just north of us, which again changes significantly once you kind of get into that park boundary there, in terms of landscape and everything. But it's you have beautiful experiences everywhere, and you can get that in those places too, in Ottawa and Toronto, but you either have to travel far or you have to to look for them.
Where in Toronto is there a nice mountain range? I mean, it's not big mountain range.
Okay, well, not a mountain range, but
it's a hill. It's a glorified hill. I mean, it's a Riding Mountain National Park. I mean, it's big, right? Exactly. But in Toronto, you have to go so far from downtown. You're out of the city limits at that point. Far. I mean, I guess Riding Mountain is what, an hour, 2 hours from Winnipeg? Or is it actually 3 hours driving?
It's closer to 3, yeah.
Right. So I mean, we used to go through it on our way to Dauphin to go visit family up there. So,
right.
All right. So, I hear I'm bashing Toronto, saying you have to get out of the city center, and then here Winnipeg boys saying, well, now this national park. Okay, so it's the same thing, I guess. But Ottawa has mountains right beside it, and I mean, you can drive anywhere just outside of Ottawa and find gorgeous landscape.
Exactly, there, because it's in the Ottawa Valley, which is the river that goes right behind Parliament Hill there, and then you go right into Gatineau. There's the famous Gatineau Park there, which it's got huge kind of ups and downs there. Again, very beautiful. So last year we spent 1 year in Winnipeg before we came out here, and that was kind of one of the biggest things that we missed was our trips to Gatineau Park, because you could go there anytime. It was perfect for a drive, for a hike, whatever. It was tons of space there, and so we were kind of missing that. And I said, well, we've got Birds Hill, which is whatever, but it's a close park that you could do similar stuff in.
Yeah,
maybe not as beautiful, but it is. close enough, and then coming out here and being right by Riding Mountain is great, because we very quickly got a 1 year pass, for our car, so we could just go in anytime. And I mean, you've got lakes up here that don't even allow electric boats in there, because it's only canoes or whatever, kayaks, because it's 100% clean and everything like that. And it's the wildlife, you see wildlife all the time and things. It's beautiful. So I'm very thankful that we are up here, because we do get to access that a lot easier than if we were further down south in Winnipeg or whatever. So it's
a lot
close
more
connection
peaceful,
to
I
Ottawa.
would say. I would say it's a lot more peaceful to
Very.
live in a small town like Rossburn. I mean, it's
Yeah.
500 people. Yeah, I think that's where most of my students would. No, not even. I think most of their towns are like 2,000, 10,000. Like a small town here is like a couple million people.
Wow.
But they all look the same. Like, and they boast that there's such development in this country, and there is. Congratulations, China. The issue is that when there is a concerted push to modernize, everything looks the same. I mean, if you think of like any of the major infrastructure movements, like one of the reasons why Ottawa and Montreal look so great, so pretty, is because it was built back 100, 200, 300 years ago. Not 300 years ago, but hundreds of years ago, where that European style was imported. They took the best elements from the European style and brought it to Canada, brought it to North America. Same with New York. They have old buildings, but here it's like maybe in 100 years, if our grandchildren come and visit China, they'll appreciate that. Yes, look at this. Look at these apartments. Look at these shopping malls. These very limestoney shopping malls. Fantastic pieces of simplistic art. It's all manual. There's no facial recognition at the doors. Who knows? But yeah, it's like a small town here is very different. But if you go to any major, basically, the cutoff point, I think, is 4 million people. At 4 million people, you get a subway system. Under 4 million, you don't get a subway system, but you get a BRT, like a rapid transit for bus. And so that changes the landscape for the road. But they have, like, intra-city, in between all the cities, they have built a lot of bridges all over the places. I mean, they're like they are a glorified Winnipeg Riverwalk. It's like, it's just bridges. There's a mountain there. There's a mountain here. We're going to connect them, and they would go do it. I don't know about the longevity of these infrastructure projects. It does make me kind of a little bit worried, but that's why I'm also hoping that AI and robots are developed a little bit faster. The current crop of Chinese children growing up are very educated and probably won't want to spend, hours in the elements fixing a bridge, 100 feet up. So that's why we need to build some robots to go send them up there instead. I mean, that
would be awesome.
That'd be
pretty cool. I would like that.
I highly suspect that China will be on the forefront of that, simply as an economic decision. It's like, well, because no one wants to crawl up the skyscraper. It's too far. No way, man. It's too scary.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I remember one of the first times as an adult driving into Toronto, and they were starting to build some of their super, super tall apartments and stuff. And I said, I not only being up there to build it, but even just living up there, I don't know how I would feel looking at my window in the morning and just seeing like the lake, because that's all I can see, because everything else is below me. Like that'd be a little freaky. But yeah, no, that's for sure. I mean, it's a thing that not everyone thinks about, but I'm sure at some point it's going to be a reality. So.
It's only recently dawned on me that I'm on the 11th floor in my building, and I'm like, I've never lived this high up ever. It seems kind of natural, but it's not the 11th. Yeah. It's not the true 11th, because they skip out anything 13 and anything with the number 4. They don't build.
Okay, yeah.
So it's like goes 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, so on and so on. Yeah, I guess that must be a prairie boy thing, a prairie person. I like to be close to the ground, not high up in the sky. It's like very much grounded. If I can't see the ground, then it's too high, sort of thing. Too much.
Well, when we were in Ottawa, we were in a building that had about 26 floors, and we were on the second, which was lovely. I think actually it was technically the third, because uh, it was there's like the main floor, the lobby, and then there was a floor of like offices and stuff, and then we were the first floor up there. So we were technically three, but yeah, it was nice and low. It was perfect, right overlooking the parking lot. And I do remember going up to someone's apartment on the 24th to the 23rd floor, and I remember looking out the window, and it was a great view. It was kind of looking towards the north, so you saw a lot of trees. You could see kind of Parliament and downtown and stuff like this. Like, it was a beautiful scene. But yeah, I don't know if I would want to do that every day. Like, I was content with watching everyone coming in and out of the parking lot and everything, and everyone walking in and out of the doors. But
Yeah, I can.
the only thing,
The one thing I like is like I can see the tops of the trees if for my apartment.
okay, yeah,
It's
yeah,
like so that keeps me grounded enough. I'm like, okay, they're touchable,
yeah,
not necessarily not touchable from here, but I mean, they're
yeah,
within eye line basically.
yeah, yeah. That I would be able to handle that. That would be good.
The one of the strange things about coming to Beijing that I realize why it feels so impersonal and crowded here is because like especially this comes back every time I go back to Winnipeg. The buildings are so short in Winnipeg. You can see the
Mhm.
roof of Winnipeg apartment building. You can't see them
Yeah,
in China. Like they're 25, 30 floors up and you're going and they just line the street. People say that
right.
some people say that Beijing is a green city. I'm like, I see concrete. I mean, there's little bits of green in between the concrete, but I mean, it's concrete
Yeah.
all over the place. It's scary. But
Wow.
then you go back to Winnipeg and you see the houses, and the houses are dwarfed by the trees. To me, that's more. I mean, that's what I grew up with, right?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
nature is
Exactly.
bigger than humanity, but here it's like, nope, humanity is now bigger than nature,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's where we lived last year. I mean, where I grew up, we were kind of outside of the city a little bit, and so we didn't have necessarily as many trees. From what I remember being told is that where our house was built is actually one of the kind of the dump sites for the Kildonan Place Mall when they built it. So
Oh,
all the dirt that was dug up, that was kind of where they dumped all the dirt. So we didn't have trees a lot and stuff like that. But then, yeah, where we lived last year in Winnipeg, we were in the North End, and yeah, you're in this beautiful streets that were just full of trees, and especially in the height of summer, you drive down, and sometimes you don't even see the sun because it's so well shaded from the trees that just go right over the road. You have this beautiful archway and stuff like this, and then the best is in the fall when everything changes
yeah.
colors again, and you get that beautiful palette of colors that just you drive anywhere and it's gorgeous. And that I love that about Winnipeg, is that there are so many trees. You have this wonderful canopy that really adds beauty to, like you say, anything, like whether it's just plain old houses or whatever. And you don't see that a lot in the newer developments.
No,
That's
nope.
it's a unique characteristic to kind of the inner city there, North End and West End and so forth, and where you grew up there. And once you start getting outside of that kind of hub, yeah, those trees start kind of spreading out and
Disappearing.
stuff, and you don't have
Yeah.
that as much. Yeah. So
Yeah, the suburbs in Winnipeg look a bit more. Can you say gentrified? But they look more. It's more like it's just houses, manicured
yeah,
lawns, and there's not many trees, which
yeah,
is I don't
exactly.
know. It's kind of sad. But you're in Rossburn. Are you going to be in Rossburn for a long time, or is this you don't know?
It's unknown at the moment.
Right. Okay.
So when I got out here, I was placed here for a minimum of 1 year. I got the letter from my bishop said that I was here for 1 year because um, there's a kind of a scenario where one guy was retiring, and so someone had to be moved to fill his place,
Right.
and then someone had to fill his place, and then I kind of hopped into the picture to fill the other ones. But there were supposed to be big moves happening this coming summer, so we were all kind of placed on a I don't want to say temporary basis, but yeah, we were placed on a 1 year assignment, and so there is a potential that we could all three of us could end up moving. But the fact that we all just moved and we all have families, I'm leaning on the side that it's unlikely, but I'm still not permanently digging my roots in just yet until I receive that letter. Of which I would at that point. It could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. I don't know at that point, but for sure, right now, I knew it was 1 year, and so I'm waiting patiently for a letter to tell me if I'm going or if I'm staying. So,
wait a minute. So, first of all, you said a couple of things that are you're going to get a letter. It's not going to be like an email or like a Facebook message. Hey, yeah, stay put. Number two, you have a contract. What?
Well, so yeah, it's not really a contract. It's nothing that I really sign or anything. It's okay. Just yeah, I get a placement. I get like they say, it's more of an assignment. So I've been assigned here, and yes, I get a. I mean, when I was first told I was moving out here, it was in conversation, in person, but it does come with an official letter because everything, especially for the church, everything is documented. Yeah. It would be like, like government or whatever. Everything is documented. So it comes in on official letterhead that's signed and everything like that. There's a copy for me, and there's a copy that stays in archives and whatnot. And so yeah, it's I've been assigned here for 1 year, and like I said, it expires the end of August, so I should be hearing in the next couple months, because usually that comes late spring or so, early summer, so that people, especially if we have families, we can start packing up and making the necessary arrangements and stuff. So it is a big deal. It's there's a lot that goes on.
What's the typical contract or assignment duration?
So it can depend from place to place. Here in Winnipeg, most of the current clergy have been in their placements for at least 10 years. Some of them have been there close to 15 years. Yeah. I never want to speak anything bad about my bishop, because I do love him. He's a great bishop. But he
how could you say anything bad?
I mean that honestly, but he what I've noticed is that he doesn't tend to move a lot of clergy. He since he's been here since about 2006, so that's 15 years now, I think, 16 years.
Who's the bishop?
And
bishop
this is so he's Metropolitan Lawrence. He's the bishop of Winnipeg. But the eparchy is not just Winnipeg, it's all of Manitoba.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So he's in charge of all of our Ukrainian Catholic priests here, and he, like I said, he's been here now about 16 years or so, and in that time, there's only ever been, one guy here type of thing. Well, not one guy. It's usually two. At least two are in the mix. Yeah. But it's been small kind of rotations like that. He I don't think he's ever done a full eparchy switch where everyone moves.
It's probably too much work. Way too much chess playing there.
It can be. It definitely comes with a lot of politics. It's something I would never want to do. As much as I sometimes would say, oh, well, this person, there's a lot of behind the scenes politics of, guys who maybe don't want to move, and maybe, I don't know, I'm not saying this of anything, but maybe some guys sometimes put their foot down and say, I don't want to go. Especially for there's a lot nowadays, there's a lot of guys that are married and have families. Yeah. And that definitely has an impact too, because often the wife has a job which sometimes is easy to be moved, sometimes it's not. And sometimes the wife is bringing in more money anyways, so sometimes it's hard to leave a good paying job if you don't know where you're going. And and the other thing is the kids too. Kids have schools and friends and communities that they're part of. For them to move, especially if you're within the city, it's not too bad. But if you're either moving out of the city or moving back into the city, that can change a lot, because the family that was here before me, they were from Ukraine. They've been here 10 years. This has been his only parish, his only experience. And so this was kind of their home, this
Right.
was their, as they call it, their homestead. This is
Yeah.
where they
Well.
started. They grew up with the community here. They had a lot of friends here. And then they got moved to Winnipeg. And so yeah, the kids, especially, they had to make new friends. They had to go to new schools, things like that. And,
Especially moving
it's
from like a small town Manitoba to big
right.
city Winnipeg. I mean, it's big
Yeah.
enough where
Yeah.
there's
Yeah,
a
exactly.
difference. There's a difference
Yeah,
in
for sure.
mentality in especially in that school age where it's like, yeah, you just don't play the same games, you don't do the same things that
Yeah.
kids would do in the
Well,
country.
and yeah, and especially like the lifestyle out here is, I mean, uh, like I said, we're right across the street from the elementary school, and kids are often, they just hop on their bikes and they come to the park and stuff like that. That doesn't always happen in the city, and depending on kind of where you go to school, your friends aren't always
Right
2 minutes
there.
away down the
Yeah,
road.
they're
Like
across the city.
that. Yeah, and I believe they all go to IHMS too. So, which we know. I mean,
Yep.
your
I
friends can
love.
come from anywhere in the city,
Yeah.
So that makes it really difficult for them, in that kind of switch. So it's, like I said, there's a lot that can go into it, and there's a lot of factors that will make a difference. And so uh, they're hard decisions. I would never want to have to make those calls. Thankfully, I'll never be a bishop, but I would never want to be in that position to be like, oh, well, I'm uprooting your family and moving them 3 hours from here.
Why can't you be a bishop? Why can't you move up to that level? Because you're
I'm
married.
married.
Because you're
I'm
capped. So
married. Yeah.
you're capped as a result of being married.
Yes, there could be, I could receive awards, and I'll be elevated in terms of rank of a priest. But I'll never become a bishop because I'm married. So,
Wow.
yeah,
So that is like the ultimate glass ceiling.
pretty much.
Now, but let's be fair. That could probably change. I mean, you just finished telling me how like most of the guys there are married, and I'm guessing that Bishop Lawrence is probably a bit older, and that a lot of the
Yeah.
bishops are a bit older, and that the church going forward might need to reconsider the ceiling level. They might have to
Well,
shift it.
that's an interesting thing, because I mean, a lot of people definitely think that. They think, I mean, just as how people think in the Roman Catholic Church that they're all of a sudden they're running out of priests and they're going to start allowing guys to be married in the Roman Catholic Church. There's a lot of those types of thoughts, but not necessarily true, because there are. First of all, I mean, especially in the Roman Catholic Church, there are plenty of clergy, as much as they are short in perspective to other generations
Yeah.
or something like that. There's still plenty of them, and just like that, we, especially in Canada, North America, are going to do the same thing that the Roman Catholic churches are doing. You rely on immigrants. You know, and I know it sounds funny, but it's true. So, like, hear me out. In the Roman Catholic Church, we have, especially where I was in Ottawa, and even here in Winnipeg, I know we have. There's a lot of guys that are, and they're not necessarily always here for long term. Sometimes
Right.
they're only here 5 or 10 years or whatever.
Yeah.
But you get priests that come from another country, that have studied, and they come in. Just like here in Manitoba, we have a good number of priests who are from Ukraine.
Yeah.
Some of them married, some of them not. But the same thing would go for the bishops, is that our bishops, so right now in Canada, we have currently only 3 bishops looking after 5 areas. Our bishop here in Manitoba, he's the oldest. He just turned 70.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, so technically he's got 5 years left, because retirement is at 75 for a bishop.
Mm-hmm.
So, and right now all 3 of them are Canadian born. Now in the States, they have 5 or 6 bishops there. And 2 or 3 of them are not born in North America. They're born in Europe. And right now, actually, our Ukrainian Catholic Church globally, we do have the youngest bishops in the Catholic Church, the entire Catholic Church.
Wow.
We have some guys that were just ordained last year. I think he was 39 years old, ordained a bishop. And so there are options. It just means that they may not necessarily may not be coming from Winnipeg or Saskatoon or wherever that the last few generations of guys have come from. So it means that we'll likely get, maybe a bishop from Ukraine or something like that who
I could see that. Yeah,
he has good English, but nonetheless, is that's kind of what the trend would be. Is that your bishops are going to come from other parts of the world, not necessarily they're not going to be homegrown. So
yeah, that I can see that happening actually, and like Ukraine wouldn't be an odd choice either, because especially with the Ukrainian Catholic Church in Canada, that would be seen like as a they're sending someone from the motherland.
Exactly. Well, and it sometimes does get met with a little bit of a contention there, because sometimes, yes, people would love to see that, but at the same time, there's difficulties with that, because you'd like to think that being a bishop you can be a bishop anywhere, and you just fill the role, whatever. It's just kind of the same job.
It's a job, right? I mean, you got to do the work.
Yeah, but everywhere you go, our church, as much as we are one church, we still have differences, and especially in the diaspora. In Ukraine, yes, everything's going to be very similar. But the experience of the church in Australia is different from Ukraine, is different from Canada, different from Brazil. There's all different experiences.
What would be the big difference? So how can that be?
Well, sometimes it's just the communities themselves. We have, okay, I'll go back. Europe, still a very religious kind of culture, more or less. Especially if you're in Ukraine, you go, your churches are full. There's people that are there praying daily and stuff like that. It's a big part of their lives still. Come somewhere in North America, that is less and less. As much as we'd like to think it's part of that.
Did coronavirus really empty out the churches, or was it happening? Was it
already going that way? Yeah. Did it just finish up? But that's the thing. The culture is different here. So you mean they might have different expectations of what they've experienced in Ukraine. It could be totally different here. And same thing. If I were to go to Ukraine, it would be a much different experience for me coming and growing up here in North America. It's just simply the culture itself is big enough to do that. I've seen priests who have come over here and kind of had a culture shock, and it has even resulted in health issues. Sometimes people are having panic attacks or whatnot because they don't know how to handle the situation. Even in Canada right now, there was a bishop that was assigned to the Slovak eparchy, which is based out of Toronto, and traditionally most of the guys have come from Canada, but they assigned a guy that came from Europe, and he ended up just kind of leaving because he couldn't handle it. It was not what he was expecting, and being a young bishop, I don't know the full circumstances of it, but I know it was enough to kind of drive him back home, because it was that different for him and that hard of an experience. I think his English was a big hurdle too. He didn't have very much, and so it is. There's, again, like I said, as much as we like to think that we're one church, which we are in theory, but we're very diverse, and we have differences wherever we go, and expectations can be different, so it can be a challenge, So
the guy who returned, he was from Ukraine?
I know he's part of the Slovak church, so could have been Slovenia or something like that. It was an Eastern European, but it wasn't Ukraine. Yeah.
Right. And this is the funny thing about being Canadian or going to Canada and being told about the wonderful country and how diverse it is. If you showed up on the shores of Vancouver or were dropped in the middle of Regina and started speaking French to someone, most people are like, go, the hell? I know grade 6 French. And if you're told that you're going to relocate to don't worry, there's a Slovenian community, and yet the young kids don't know what you're saying because they only like partially paid attention in class. Your reality check, it's not going to be such a fun ride. I know it's like same thing coming
Exactly.
as an English teacher going. Big difference between English teachers and priests and bishops. I mean, English teacher,
Yeah,
they'll
a
they'll
little bit.
they'll fill the role pretty quickly. It's like they'll just find the next guy
Yeah,
walking down the street, the next foreigner that shows up. Priest,
yeah,
bishop, a little bit more difficult to find them just walking around, sort of thing.
yeah, exactly. But
So
no,
then,
that's the thing. Go
does
ahead.
that mean that you would be able to travel like outside of Canada then? Like if the church needed you to move somewhere else, they could send you Australia, Brazil.
So yes and no. It doesn't quite work with that like that for us here in North America, especially in Canada, because most of our eparchies we are very low on priests.
Right.
Like for example, I'm not just looking after one church here. I look after a whopping 12 churches in my district. So we are very short on clergy, and so if anything, we would be requesting from other countries, especially Ukraine.
Yeah.
Like I said, most of we have a good, I would say probably almost half of us now are from Ukraine.
Wow.
But yeah, and but yeah, I mean, we could, if I, for whatever reason, wanted a change of scenery or something like that, I could put in a request to my bishop. And I could ask him. I could ask him for sabbatical, like a year off, where I go and do ministry somewhere else or something like that.
Right.
But for the most part, I've I was ordained here, and I'm going to be here, my whole life. It does also vary. I mean, sometimes we also have jobs as clergy within the church.
Hmm.
Now, my pure lack of Ukrainian language is going to be something that keeps me here in Manitoba, which I'm totally okay with. But I mean, we've had guys who have gone on, back to Ukraine and worked right at the top level. Worked with the patriarch and stuff like that. In jobs there. I actually have a friend right now who he's currently in Toronto area in Brampton. He's a deacon, but he does work for kind of the whole church right now. He was sent back home during COVID because the patriarch, I think, kind of just told him, "Don't go home, be safe for now, stay there." So I think he does have plans to return, but that's depending on your expertise. You could end up in other places. I've known a lot of priests who have, like I said, been in Ukraine. Some have gone to the States. Some have been even just across Canada, have been kind of transiting across Canada,
Yeah.
depending on their job or their skill set and stuff like that. So it can happen, but like I said, language is a big thing. You need to be bilingual at least, or you need, like I said, a good skill set that is either rare or very valued, that they need
Well,
not
what
anyone else.
skill set does a priest need?
Well, sometimes there's, especially in the what's called the curia, the kind of the administrating body of the church. Sometimes it's things such as communications or something like that, or maybe you're really good with a certain type of church relations thing, or
Okay.
uh, what's the other thing? Interfaith type of thing, or things like that.
What do you
You
mean by
might have a special.
interfaith?
Well, there's in most churches we all have something that an interfaith council or something where we interact a lot with other faiths, not just other Christian churches, but even with Muslims and Jews and stuff like that. And you do find a lot of that in Ukraine, actually, because Ukraine does have a lot of those diverse kind of faiths. And so they often have meetings or gatherings with other church leaders, be it a rabbi or an imam or something like that. So like I said, maybe that's ecumenical side of things. You might be well versed in that, or it might be your specialty. So you might be on a council like that or something like that. It's you don't necessarily think about it, but there can be a lot of kind of unique jobs that you might need.
This is the first I've ever heard that this sort of there is such diversity in the.
Yeah,
You're calling
well,
it work, and I'm actually even surprised that you're calling it work. But I guess that's
well, and that's the thing. I
is.
mean, most people when they think of church, they think of your own little parish, your parish priest, your community that you gather with. But I mean, yeah, we still have a kind of a governmental structure, and with that comes different departments and different jobs that often are filled by priests, but sometimes it's nuns, sometimes it's laity. Again, it depends on your skill set. If we have some, I mean, especially in Winnipeg at the time, in the 90s, we had a lot going on for us in Winnipeg. And we had, catechetical programs that were run by the laity, the youth programs that were run by the laity, stuff like that. So it's, there's a lot of jobs that are out there in the church, but if you're skilled enough and you're needed enough for that, you can be hired. Or taken from where you are.
Right. So, but how much choice does a priest, like you or someone of your level, how much choice do they have in where they're going to go and what they're going to do?
So for me, I have no choice. I mean, even as a pastor, I really don't have choice. Like I said, there are assignments, so you get assigned by a bishop to where you're going to be. Even in these jobs, you're generally assigned, or you're invited or asked or whatever. Now sometimes you could probably decline. Like if I were asked right now to go do something in Ukraine, I have a young family and stuff. Probably not a good time to be moving across the world. Either with the family or by myself, So
Right.
If they gave me the opportunity to decline, I probably would decline. But that being said, I mean, even a bishop technically, when he's a priest and gets the call from Rome saying, "Hey, we want you to be bishop of so and so or wherever," most guys say yes, but you do have the opportunity to decline. There could be any reason, it could be health of a family or something or whatnot, or your own health even, or maybe you really don't feel like you're qualified. There could be a million reasons, but
Yeah.
I personally don't know of too many that have declined. But I do know it happens, and those things are usually quiet, because usually when you've got the call, you don't often say that you've been called to be a bishop until you either are, or you just don't tell anyone that you were asked and you declined.
Yeah.
So it's but like I said, it does happen, and you can have the ability, the freedom to say no, but usually I think in most cases you get the call, you go.
Sounds more like the
So
military than anything else. Like you're following orders of a sort.
very close, actually. Many people often make the correlation between military and the church, because it is a hierarchical system that are very similar, and yeah, you you get called up when you do good or when you're qualified, and your commander, your bishop, will tell you where you're going, and you have X amount of time to pack up and move. So and which my wife's family is mostly military, and a little bit of clergy, so we know that very well, and it is true. It's you go when you're told, and like you say, it's very close to the military. So
What sort of military is your wife come from,
uh
or her
so
family?
uh, she comes from a family of four siblings. So there's four of them in total. She's the second one.
Okay.
So they all grew up in small town, as well, small town Saskatchewan. Her dad is a priest, and so very much the same life here. But they all, when they were young, were very involved with the cadet program.
Okay.
And so they all went through it. They all did the summer camps and everything. And somewhere along the way, her mom actually got involved with leading stuff. So she was actually the first to really enter into official military,
Right.
as a cadet leader. And since then, she's had a great career with that, and has been a high-ranking officer with different camps and stuff throughout the summers and everything, and within Saskatoon. But then from there, her two older brothers, or sorry, not her two older brothers, her older brother and her younger brother, they have both joined the military. And one went straight in, and the other one went through school first and kind of did training at the same time and stuff. But they, they are both went the military route, and then later on, her dad, who's, like I said, is a priest, about not quite 10 years ago, but around there, wanted to join as well. So he joined and became a padre.
What?
And so that's
He joined the military.
So, yeah. So he's been deployed before. He's been last year he was deployed to Ukraine, actually, to be military chaplain with the Canadian forces there, and stuff like that. So there's four of them out of the six are actual military. And so, like I said, it's a big part of their family.
So wait a minute. What about the other two? What do they do?
So my wife,
English
she
teachers.
didn't follow that. Well, no, not quite. They so my wife, she wanted still the kind of that service orientation there. So, but she followed the church route more. So she went. She has a theology degree, like myself. She actually got it before me. But she has always wanted to do like youth ministry and things like that. So, so she's worked for the Ottawa Archdiocese when we were out there. She, like I said, she has a theology degree, a youth certificate, and has done some church, like parish ministry. But right now, again, because we've moved twice in the last 3 years and stuff like this, it's kind of up in the air right now. So right now she's focusing on raising a family.
Right. Yeah.
But once they grow up and once we get out of all this COVID stuff, we hope that she gets into something like that again, or wherever else. I know she has a bunch of ideas, but either way, it's in that kind of ministry minded mindset. And the other one, the last one, the youngest sister, she's actually a paramedic, so not quite military, but close.
Well, she's got to deal with all that gross stuff that shows up to an accident scene.
Exactly. She still has a uniform and everything. Right. So so she was a paramedic for years up north in La Ronge, Saskatchewan, and now she's actually going for her advanced career paramedic training right now. So
advanced career.
Advanced care. So there's primary care, and then there's advanced care. So you get to kind of do more, administer more. Your level of drugs or medicine that you can administer gets increased. Right. It's kind of like how you have your different levels of your nurses. You're a regular nurse or a whatever, physician nurse, whatever. I don't know the whole ranks, but something like that. Like they have more training, so they have more abilities that they can do. So
you know more about this than I do. As an English teacher, there's no real. I mean, unless I did more administration stuff. I mean, I show up. I teach kids mostly. Actually, I don't teach so much anymore, but whatever. Oh, good. So you have a very properly organized family, it sounds like, on both sides. I mean,
yes. Well, for their work, yes, they're very organized for their work. But I would say when it comes time for Christmas holidays or something like that, we like to have fun though still. So that's good.
So wait a minute. Who would get after you more for saying something on this podcast? Would it be your wife or the church?
Well, it depends who hears it. So.
Oh, well, hopefully lots of people.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so then you've been you're in Rossburn now. You could move around at any time. Who knows? I mean, what was it? What was the process like getting to where you are now? I mean, in terms of Because you said you were in Ottawa, and you're still a young man-ish, even though you do have a little bit less hair than the last time I saw you.
Yeah, I know. You got to angle the lights the right way,
But like, what was it? What sort of made you go in this direction?
Well, so first of all, it's been a very long process, a very long journey. I personally have wanted to be a priest since as long as I can remember, since probably was about 4 or 5 years old.
Why? What sort of put that interest in you?
Well, our family, we always did Sunday liturgy and stuff like that, and where I went to church in Transcona, in eastern Winnipeg, there, I grew up with a pastor there, Father Michael Boyachuk, who
Yep.
he was a great pastor and everything, and he very somehow I don't even know why, but he became like a role model for me, to the point that I would play church at home. Most people play doctor or whatever. I played church.
Okay.
I would set up a little table. I'd get my Bible and things like this. And there's even stories of me at a dance competition. I wasn't dancing, but my sister's dance competition years ago in Toulon, and I was giving the whole dance class mini Oreo communion on the baseball mound. Like I had everything down. Like that was just what I wanted to do. I don't know why. I don't know exactly what it was that drew me to that. Especially that early of an age, but something did, and it never went away. It kept growing. As I got older, people would ask me, and I said, well. I think at one point I would respond with, I want to be Pope, which quickly faded. But I mean, yeah, for the longest time, that's kind of what the answer was. And it just stuck. Along the way, there were maybe other side professions or backups, in case, but the one constant was always the priesthood. And so I followed it. Throughout my teens and stuff, I grew deeper in my faith and everything. I learned how to be an altar server and serve very proficiently and everything like that. I learned a lot, especially in those teenage years. And then same thing. I eventually, when I got to university, I was always encouraged to go and get a backup degree. Just in case, even though I was still pretty set on it, but it was, as a parachute type of thing. And so I went to University of Winnipeg and I got my BA in, it was actually a double major with philosophy and geography. So,
interesting combo.
Yeah, well, my original intent was going to be going to teaching with geography as my major.
Right.
And then eventually I was told, well, when you get to seminary, they're actually going to require you to do a lot of philosophy. So you may as well start doing that now.
Oh, okay.
So I ended up doing it. I ended up doing so much of it that it worked out to be a double major of geography and philosophy. So I know an odd combo, but there is reason.
But you want to be a teacher instead. So, or what was, you said you had some ideas. Right.
Yeah, that was my backup of, if all else fails, I'll have a teaching degree, and then I could go anywhere from there, So that was kind of the plan. And then, like I said, the philosophy kind of ended up taking over a little bit more, and the teaching got dropped, and so yeah. And then I ended up finally applying and getting into seminary. So I headed out there. I had just finished I ended up doing 5 years at University of Winnipeg because I had so many other credits.
Yeah.
And then I moved out to Ottawa to do another 5 years there. So in total, I did
10 years.
10 years of university. Yep. And if anyone who knows me, I hate school. I absolutely hate school. I could
Doesn't sound like it.
Get out of there. Yeah, I know. Well, that's the thing. Especially if you look at my family, I have spent the most in school out of all my, my sister and all my cousins and stuff. I've spent the longest time in school out of everyone. So it's funny that way, but But no, I mean, that's, like I said, it was a long process because of that, because I've been wanting to do this since I was a very young kid. And I followed it ever since, and did, like I like to say, I did my time. And I mean, it's come out on the end, but it was definitely a long time getting here, though.
Now you said that someone who told you when you were at U of W that you should start doing your philosophy, like because it sounds like you had some sort of career guidance at that point.
Well, kind of. So, the well, actually, as of now, I guess he no longer is the current rector, but the former rector of the seminary, the guy that's in charge there, was actually a priest from Winnipeg, Father Michael Wynn. And
I know
so
Father Michael Wynn.
exactly,
He's an
yes. So
engineer by
he,
trade, isn't he?
yes, he is. Yeah, and that's, he will tell anyone who listens that he is actually an engineer. Actually, at one point in the seminary, we had about 3 or 4 engineers living under the roof of the seminaries. So,
Was that
um,
picture of you guys in Ottawa? Because I saw something come across Facebook just
it could have been. Yeah,
recently.
there's like I said, at my time there's 2 guys for sure from Saskatchewan plus himself, and I think there was one more that had some kind of engineering as well. So yeah, but so no, I'm good friends with him, most of my life, and so he was already the rector of the seminary at that point, and he
Yeah.
was the one that said, the requirements from Rome are going up. They're increasing more philosophy, so it would be helpful. Probably at the time it was, do a course here or there type of thing, but I ended up doing enough to do a degree with it. So
Oops.
yeah, which in the end was not bad, because by the time I got to Ottawa, I only had to do a couple kind of filler courses, and then I was done my philosophy. So it kind of worked out. I would have had to do it at some point anyways, but it just somehow worked out that I did it all at once. So
So then, what philosophies are we talking about here? Like, obviously, classically trained, like Plato and Aristotle. You have to go all the way back there.
yeah, so it's, for the most part, it's a general kind of philosophy degree. So yeah, you do a lot of your classics, you do modern philosophy, you do your different kind of streams of like morals and ethics and things like that. So mine is pretty broad. I've got the full spectrum. I would say my favorites though would have been like morals and ethics for sure.
Why
'Cause
is that? Why would that be your favorite?
I just really enjoyed sometimes the debates, of going back and forth of trying to determine what was right, what was wrong. There's
And
also
that's what social
within
media
that,
is these days, isn't it?
well, exactly, and within that, I mean, there's also just there's a plethora of ways that you can determine those things. There's all these different schools of thought of how to determine what is morally right or what is morally wrong and stuff like that. So, and even those were, I mean, I don't always agree with them, but some of them sometimes made sense.
So
Almost to a point that you're like, well, okay, maybe there's that last bit there that just throws the whole thing out. So
right. What would be an
it
example? Could you come up with one, or like, can you think of
oh
one that would be sort of doesn't have to be relevant to anything today, but I mean,
yeah,
you've done a
I
degree
mean,
in it.
it was a long time ago, right? But I mean, there is some that were like the maxims of like, or even just how they administered them. It wasn't even just how they determined, but sometimes it was like, okay, if this is going to be the rule, then it has to be the rule for everything in the world with every circumstance. There was no wiggle room.
Like a
And
standard, like a standard
yeah, and you're like, well,
interpretation.
okay, this, for some things this would make sense, but then you look at some other circumstance, you're like, no, that would never work in that circumstance. So yeah, there was just, and also I think one of the things that also drew me to that was I had one good prof in Winnipeg that was that was kind of his specialty, and I really enjoyed him as a prof, and learned a lot from him. So I think that was also kind of the other clincher there, was that it was a good class. I liked the discussions. I liked the topics and stuff. Plus, I had a good prof that kind of wrapped it all up nicely.
Oh, jeez. So you mean
So
professors
yeah,
and teachers actually have influence on students' abilities to, pursue anything?
Yeah, sometimes I do joke because again, not liking school and not liking the process and everything like that. But it's I mean I've had a lot of good profs over the years and stuff. But it was very funny that my last year, my very last course in Ottawa, was probably my best course out of the 10 years. It was meant to be a kind of cumulative course that kind of went back through all of your theology and kind of did, a whole bunch of topics all at once. And the prof that I had, he was a Roman Catholic priest who was from, I think, like Bavaria or something like that. And he had this wonderful accent, but he was so lively in the way he taught, and everything, and very engaging. Excuse me, which was I think one of my biggest things was my learning style was always, I needed engagement. I hated the sit in a thing and just listen for an hour of talk. Like, it had to be engaging. And this guy was the whole deal. He really engaged the students. We had a smaller class actually, but every class was exciting and great conversation and stuff like that. And so I said, I joked that it was unfortunate that my very last class, my entire school life, was the best class that I've ever had. But
that's at the end of 10 years of schooling. I mean, you had a decade to prepare for that class, basically. It sounds like.
Well, exactly. yeah. But no, it was like I said, the philosophy, it wasn't my favorite, but I did have some good parts out of it. Like I said, the morals and the ethics, and like you say, you're right. It's very much what social media is all about right now. Is determining what's right, what's wrong, and who has the right to say things and stuff like that. And I mean, it can get us into trouble sometimes, but but if it's unhealthy, you can do it right,
When a lot of those philosophy books were written, though, they didn't have everybody screaming at them. I mean, which is what social media is. I mean, it's just, I was on Twitter last night, and it's just everyone's shouting something. And there's always a concern. There's a new hashtag, this and that, and you're just going... I go back to I wonder if my life overseas would be so much different if I just didn't go onto social media. Like, how could how blissful would my life be if I just kind of ignored that whole side of things? But okay, so you've been talking a lot about these courses, and like you're in the seminary. You were in the seminary in Ottawa, right?
Yeah.
So
correct.
What is the process of going to the seminary? Because I was encouraged, not just by it wasn't just like an off-the-cuff suggestion by my parents at one time. Well, you could join the seminary. I'm like, that's not this guy. No, I don't think God wants to be serving in those ranks just yet, or ever. But there was another a friend's father who was like, yeah, you should join the seminary. They pay for everything. Your education's paid for. It's a good job. I mean, just go, just do it. You don't even have to become a priest after. Just go. I mean, so what's the process of becoming a priest, of going through the seminary?
Right. So whoever that was very right in many ways. Things do get covered a lot.
It was Mr. Trach. I'm not sure if you remember the Trach brothers, but it was Mr. Trach. Every time I saw him, he's like, join the seminary, just go.
Yeah, and you know what? I had some good experiences with him a couple years before he passed, because he was serving at our parish before I left. So I got to kind of be with him and kind of have that last little bond, before I left and stuff. So I can hear him sing that too. but yeah, no, I mean, so I started by, I mean, most people knew my intents of what I was wanting to do and stuff like that. And even my bishop knew that, but I still had to go through the form process. So I wrote a letter expressing this to my bishop and to the rector. There's a whole application process. At one point, I did sit down with the bishop himself to kind of have like an interview with him, stuff like that. And which, again, most people who knew me, that probably wasn't 100% necessary. But again, there's a lot of formalities that you still kind of have to go through. And
Yeah, you
stuff
still
like
got to
that.
do it.
And,
Yep.
yeah, and I remember actually one of his questions being, well, how do you feel about the rural parishes? And at the
He had you
time, I was
marked.
well, I it was a joke because I often say that I think I sealed my lifetime out here because at the time I'd just been dating my wife now, and I said, oh well, she grew up in a small town. Her dad was a priest in small town, and I think it's great. I think it's such an important part of our church. Blah blah blah. And I went on, and I think I went on a little too much about it. Which again, nothing against the rural areas because I do find them very important and they are great communities. But I think I oversold it, and so I think that may have signed my lease out here for life, but which is okay. But no. So I sat down with him, and then once he kind of gives his approval, and then the rector does that too. Then yeah, I get my kind of acceptance and saying everything. So I packed up. I moved out there. My first year, I was, like I said, I was still only dating Sophia at the time. So any single guys or anyone who's dating, you live in the seminary. So the seminary itself is just a big building. It's kind of like a dorm room type of thing. You get your own little small room. There's in the building itself, we have a chapel that we do all of our liturgical services in. We have, a common dining room and kitchen where we often have our own cook who cooks for us. Often because we don't have time to cook. We do on the weekends, but the daily things were often done by the cook and stuff like that. And so yeah, you live in a community. You do everything together. Your days are spent at school pretty much, or at least doing homework and studying and stuff like that. And then yeah, you do often a pretty full liturgical schedule. It did vary from time to time. Sometimes it was a little lighter. Sometimes we got breaks when we were in exam season, or we were overworked or something like that. Especially because our services would start at 6 a.m. or 6:30 rather, and so sometimes giving that sleep in was necessary.
Right.
If the rector could see us dragging our feet, so he's like, okay, day off, sleep in.
What would you be doing at 6:30 in the morning? Is that Vespers, or what do you guys do?
No, we would do liturgies. So we would start the day with liturgy.
I guess Vespers can't be in the morning, can't they?
Well, it depends who you ask. Vespers is technically no, it can be in the morning, but it's usually done in the evening. It's your sunsetting service. Yes. So it would be matins. Matins is the next one. It's Vespers, matins, then liturgy. But no, our daily recycle was just the liturgy in the morning at 6:30, because then we'd be done around 7:30, have a quick breakfast, and then off to class in Ottawa, classes started at 9. So 9 or 8:30, I don't remember. It was a while ago already, but yeah. So you kind of just kind of float into the next thing, and then sometimes on feast days or whatever, you might have Vespers in the evening or something too. So you'd have to do that. Your weekends, you always had Vespers on Saturdays and matins and liturgy on Sunday morning. And then in the seminary, we also had other kind of classes too. We had the what are called rector's classes or in-house classes, which were, as I always told people, I said your university was your theology, your kind of theory of things and whatnot, whereas these rector's classes were our practical side of things. So that's where we learned to get vested and how to prepare liturgy and how to baptize a baby and stuff like that. You learned all the practical skills of being oh yeah. We didn't get to practice on a real baby, but you learned all that practical, that physical side of things of being a priest. And even sometimes we'd have guest speakers that would come in, how to deal with counseling and stuff like this with different issues and stuff like that, be it in an individual or a family or whatever, how to deal with things, how to run a parish meeting, small things like that. Everything kind of was covered in there. I shouldn't say everything. There was still a lot to be learned, but for the most part, they did their best to go over all that stuff.
So what did you not learn in those classes? Like, what was like one of the things that once you were in the real world, so to speak, that you're like, oh, nah, school didn't really teach me this one.
Well, first and foremost, we did not learn how to be a priest during a pandemic. So, so that was a big learning curve. Was
Okay,
just
but
how
let's
to
be
how to do
fair.
ministry.
The church has been around a long time. It survived the plague. Okay, there's been other pandemics and whatnot in world history, and the church is a global historical organization. There's got to be at least some book, right?
You would think. Well, you know what? There might be. I shouldn't say there isn't. There might be, but no, for sure. I mean, for a lot of us, especially guys that I went to school with, that was our big thing. Is like no one prepared us for this. We didn't get prepared to, know how to have to sanitize and tape off pews and get flow going right in your parish and stuff. There was a lot that we had to kind of learn on the ground. I mean, we were all learning, everyone from myself to the bishop. It was,
I don't think that's a church thing. I think that's a new world way of doing things.
Yeah, that was a society thing for sure.
Even China was like, wait a minute, we're supposed to disinfect things? What is? We usually make this for North American markets. Why are we using it?
Yeah, no, exactly. It was we all learned together for that, but I don't know that there was as much as you do learn in the seminary, it's not always necessarily something that you didn't learn, but maybe you just didn't have enough exposure to or enough practice of. Like for me, one of the first things was hearing confessions. When I had done my confession course at the rector's class, it was I think the end of my second or third year.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't do anything with it or about it till I became a priest. And I knew what I had to do and kind of what had to be done and stuff. But even just like the practical side of counseling someone or knowing how to respond to when someone says something to you or confesses their sins to you, that was a whole new thing because I hadn't touched it for years and had any exposure to it other than my own going to confession. But that's not always, it's not the same.
That's different. No, that's exactly. You producing language, not hearing someone saying
and having to respond to it in the moment. I can't say, okay, give me 10 minutes, I'll come back. I can't do that. It's got to be right there, right in the moment.
Let me Google that. How do you deal with this?
Yeah, exactly. So it's that what I think was probably the biggest like I said, not something that I didn't learn. It was done once and then kind of forgotten about. So I kind of had to reteach myself those things.
Right.
Serving the liturgy, I've been serving as an altar boy since I was 9 or 10 years old. And I'm one of those people that I've watched every move of every priest and every deacon that I've served with. So by the time I got up there myself, it was very natural. I knew everything, so that wasn't an issue. But yeah, and then even last year we did a lot. I had a pastoral year in Winnipeg, so that was kind of like a student teacher for a year.
Okay.
And I got placed in two parishes, but I was put in as the administrator, the office, and which great learning experience. I did gain a lot of experience from that, but it was definitely in stuff that I had no clue what I was doing. I was balancing bank accounts and issuing checks and doing all this kind of financial stuff that I had zero training in. I've had no experience with financial things, as far as using my debit card goes. So it was
that sounds like a normal art student who comes into the real world and realizes, what do you mean the tax man takes my money from this? I made the money. What do you mean they're taking it? Yeah, that's art student right there.
No. For sure, 100%. And I tried telling them that, but I don't think they understood that. but that was the thing, is that and right now where I am currently, I don't have anything to do with finances and stuff like that. The biggest job I have administratively is kind of working my own schedule out and doing like the parish bulletin and stuff like that, and looking after, we have social media accounts and stuff like that, so doing some of that kind of stuff. But I don't have, especially out here, I mean, we're small parishes, we don't have a full functioning office
Right.
with day-to-day work. So like I said, I don't touch finances, which I'm very thankful for. But yeah, I mean, that is still, it's something that could be a reality for a priest, to be having to do something with it at least. And very little attention was ever put onto that. It was kind of like, well, you might have to do it, but that's about it. That was the extent of the conversation. So unless you came in with previous knowledge of that stuff, you're going in blind and you hope for the best. So.
But I mean,
but it was
the organization, the church organization has there's not too much you can do. I mean, there's probably a textbook sort of scenario where it's like church money comes in, church money goes out, taxes
right.
go to the government. They always take their cut.
Yeah. And there is, you do give a certain percentage back to the chancery office, to the eparchy and stuff like that. But it was more just kind of it wasn't so much the theory of it, but it was the practical side. I had to deal with QuickBooks for the first time in my life, which I had never touched before, and I'm having, not only am I having to learn how to do all the stuff, I have to learn how to use the program and stuff like that with it. So there was definitely some challenges, some interesting experiences that went along with it. In the end, I like to just look back and say, well, the church still had its money. The church didn't explode while I was there, so we're good.
Yeah.
But I definitely, like I said, I'm not a professional by any means, but I definitely gained experience from it. And even now, if someone were to come in here and show me the books for one or two of the parishes, I'd have at least enough understanding to be like, oh, okay, something looks fishy here. Can you explain this? Or why do we have this expense? I'd have enough understanding to do that. But by no means would I be able to be doing the accounting for anything at this point. So I'd have to go back and do more school to be able to do that.
And you have 12 parishes to deal with. So I mean, I'm guessing that they didn't really cover on how to. Did they have any sort of guidance on how to deal with multiple parishes?
A little bit. Sometimes when we talked about like doing liturgical services and stuff like that, yes, most cases it was kind of under the understanding that you'd have one parish, maybe two, but definitely not 12. And like I said, it was more like okay, well, how do I do an Easter schedule with multiple parishes?
How do you?
You spread it out. You do sometimes the services multiple times, and so I should back up though. My district isn't a full functioning 12 parishes.
Okay.
I have 12 churches that I look after. Two of those communities happen every Sunday, so I have services every Sunday, and they're active parishes. Another two parishes, they alternate back and forth, so they're every second Sunday, each of them. And then the other 8 happen only maybe once, maybe twice. I think some of them are about 4 times a year.
Oh, okay.
We call them Prosnick parishes because they for sure their main celebration is their parish feast day.
Right.
And then usually there's like an AGM at some point. So they're very small parishes with very few members that are actually there, but there's enough that they have at least once a year something going on. So like I said, my main focus is these kind of 4 that happen frequently, and stuff like that. And so yeah, like the schedule gets divided. It's not as broken up among 12. It's only 4, but a little more doable. But
how do you be at 12 parishes at 8:30 in the morning?
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing. It was like for Easter, I ended up on Good Friday we had. So what happens out here is they usually drop one community, and so you do it 3 times. So for Good Friday, I did the Good Friday service 3 times. I think it was 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and 4 o'clock.
Yeah. Okay.
And then Easter I did one on the Saturday evening, and then 2 in the morning. I did I think a 6 o'clock and a 10 o'clock. So
which one would be considered the authentic one?
If you ask me, I would have said the 6 o'clock was the most authentic.
Okay.
Just because of the practice of it, the liturgics of it. On Easter Sunday, you're supposed to start with the church all dark.
Yeah.
You move the shroud from its tomb, you put it on the altar, you light that first candle, and then everyone lights candles after that. You do your procession around the church, and then you come in with the church lit up, candles, everything lit, bells ringing, everything like that. And so we were actually able to do that. We started at 6 o'clock. It was still dark out. For a really, really rare year, we had no snow on the ground at Easter.
Right.
So we were actually able to do our processions outside on grass and not in snow, which was wonderful.
Or mud.
But yeah. Yeah. So we were actually able to do all that stuff. And so that's why I think that the 6 o'clock was the most kind of authentic in terms of what the service should be.
Right.
We were able to do things as full as possible and as proper as possible. Again, but though it doesn't take away from anything. Saturday night was just the same. It was just at a different time.
Right.
And same with the 10 o'clock. We did all the same stuff. It just happened to be a little bit later. So, they were all the same service, but it just, in terms of feel, I think the 6 o'clock was the most feeling authentic. So
I remember back in my days when I went to church a bit more regularly. For the later ones, do they put the shroud back, or is it like you do the service again, but there's sort of a continuation, a continuity of like, okay, he's risen. We're not putting him back in the ground.
Yeah,
he's not back in the cave. He's gone.
So my it depends. So because these were in 3 different parishes and they were 3 different services,
right?
You did it all once and that was it.
Yeah.
Some churches, though, you end up doing it still once, and then you don't often repeat it, because what ends up happening is your first service is the one that has the matin service and everything, and then your liturgy, and then afterwards, usually it's just the liturgy.
Yeah.
They don't do the full matin service before it again and stuff like that. So it just becomes your Easter liturgy,
Yeah.
So yeah, often it's done once and that's it. And that, like I said, because out here it was different parishes, we all did it once, and that was it. So, so then I got better as the day went. That's for sure.
Now you just said that there's some parishes out there, and this kind of almost makes me feel a little bit better. And I think what will help with my mother understanding my plight as a backpacker and traveler who maybe doesn't go to church all the time, and everybody else out there who doesn't go to church all the time. You're saying that some churches don't meet all the time, so maybe if you only went on Christmas and Easter, if you only went twice a year, that's still okay. The so-called CEO.
So it's one of those things that, again, it depends who you ask. If you ask some, from generations ago, they'll say, "Oh no, you have to go to church every Sunday
yep.
and you have to be there every time." Which, ideally, yes, would be great and would be amazing. But especially, again, North America, we know that's not a reality. Believe it or not, one of the actual teachings is that you, at the very least, you should go to church on Easter. That is your kind of bare minimum, because that is the feast of feasts. That is what the liturgy is based on, is the resurrection. We celebrate the resurrection every time we do the liturgy. So that is kind of like if you had to go once a year, go to Easter.
Okay.
But you're right. Out here, churches don't always happen. And so here it's a little different, because a lot of these places, especially now with modern technology such as the car, you can get to the next church, in 20 minutes or whatever, which does happen. Especially the 2 that alternate Sundays. They're about they're about 10 minutes apart, the towns.
Oh, yeah.
And so when it's in the one town, everyone from the other one goes there. When it's in the other one, everyone goes to that church. So they do share. They're kind of one community in that sense. And same thing with the other ones. All these other parishes that only happen a couple times a year, they live close enough that they will come to the other parishes to do their liturgy. Right now, though, during a pandemic, it's very different because some aren't going at all. Some are only doing online services. Some are going maybe once a month or so to give other people a turn because of limits and numbers. So it definitely varies in that sense. You have every week could be different in that sense, but no, for the most part, for those who don't have services all the time, they do attend other churches.
Right.
It's just like it's my home, and I want a service there once a year. Actually, a lot of these parishes out here are actual historic sites, because some of them are over 100 years old.
Right.
So for that sense too, it kind of just keeps them open and stuff, keeps them active so that they don't just fall into disrepair and get forgotten about. So
what is the state of most of the, because a lot of these rural churches, I mean, yeah, they're old. It's like if you ever go to Poland or Ukraine or any part of Europe, I mean, there's how many, oh, you need to go see this church. After about the third church, you're like, no, don't need to see them anymore. I've seen them. I mean, I know what happens. It's the same thing. But I mean, with these ones in Canada, I'm going to ask a very pointed question. How much does it cost to run a parish? Like to keep a parish in the rural part of Canada with the elements that happen? I mean, how much does it cost to keep a church going?
Well, that's a good question. And I honestly am going to tell you that I don't know the exact number. I do know, though, I mean, okay, so some of these really rural ones that are like I said, over a century-year old, they are made out of wood. They have no AC. Their heating is literally a wood stove in the middle of the church.
Wow.
And so they are, believe it or not, they are kind of protected, I would say, from elements, because most of them have tree lines somewhere.
Right.
And so they are kind of protected from winds and stuff like that. But I mean, like I said, they're 100% wood. So anything from a lightning strike or a bad put out cigarette or something, it could be gone. It could be gone.
Or a church candle.
Exactly. Excuse me. Which has happened. So
well, and that's also why they moved to those electronic candles. I mean, it was a fire hazard.
Right.
It just
when
you look at it now, when you see someone with an open flame in a church, you're like, no, get your cell phone lighter, get your cell phone flashlight if you need, but you're not having an open candle. It's just too much of a hazard.
Yeah. So no, it is. I mean, they are, especially these ones out here, they are in excellent condition, because some of them do receive funding and stuff like that, and they have enough of a community that supports them to keep them going. So when I first got out here back in September, and I kind of did a tour and I checked some of them out, I mean, there's parishes that were built in 1912 or 1904, and they're in pristine condition. Because they've been well looked after, or they've had, maybe renos here and there that have helped for the upkeep and stuff like that. So for the most part, they're in great condition. And like I said, some do receive funding, so that does help to do things. But because they don't really have electricity, some don't have running water at all. I mean, you're not paying for any of those bills, which is great. You're essentially paying taxes at that point. That's pretty much it. And then the other thing,
how can they be getting taxed if they're not doing anything?
Well, yeah, who knows? But like land tax, like that'd be about it. But the other thing would be my wage. So it's the parishes that technically pay me. They pay the eparchy, and then the eparchy pays me. But there is kind of a standard wage of what we're supposed to be receiving, and so as in a parish, the parish would pay that full amount. In the district, though, it kind of gets divided amongst. And here they have a system of like basically they kind of calculate it as per liturgy. So, if you have 52 liturgies a year, you pay X amount times 52. If you have 4, you pay X amount times 4, whatever.
Right.
And so and a lot of that comes out of donation, or most of it all comes out of donations rather. So it's I don't know the exact, like I said, the exact amount, but I'm sure some of those 100-year-old ones, it does cost because there's not a lot of people left, and so it does get harder. Because there's also insurance too. That's the other thing, is that they have to pay insurance to protect these things. So there's like wage and insurance are your biggest expenses, which for a smaller community can be hard. But yeah, it's.
Why would they pay insurance on a building that is? I mean, it seems like it'd be almost a better idea to just make it a communal effort to maintain it, and that would be your insurance, rather than paying a company somewhere that for what, to do more paperwork. Our church burned down. Well, I didn't need to fill out a form to tell you that, and you can see the charred remains.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's I mean our insurance here though does go through it's all as one. So right. The eparchy pays insurance that, again, the churches pay the eparchy pays out the insurance for all of the churches. So everyone is covered.
That's a blanket insurance, basically.
Yeah. It's actually an ecclesial, like a church insurance company that exists. But I mean, yeah, it's, I don't know. I guess if something were to get destroyed or whatever, I mean, if it's repairable, yeah, you'll get the money back to put in those repairs or whatever. If it's completely destroyed, I don't know if a community would rebuild ever, but
it'd be tough.
I don't know.
It'd be tough. I mean, you'd be relying on probably the locals to come, and you wouldn't want to be bringing out. Oh, who knows? Maybe the immigrants could come over, build a few churches.
That's yeah. Well, and I mean, the thing is, though, is and some of these places, though, I mean, they are very rural. I mean, even like at least I'm in a hub, and the other parishes are in some town of some sort. But there's some parishes that don't really even belong to a town. They belong to an area. They're surrounded by farm and houses. There's no. You have to come to my town to get your groceries or whatever. So right. It's it's interesting in that sense, because it is 100 years ago they were built because there were farms around there that communities existed. Some of them developed into towns, some of them didn't. But those that didn't, the churches remained and they were somewhat active. But again, most of those people there, you can drive to the next town to go to your church. So,
kids went to school. The machines got bigger, so less people on the farms, less people in towns, and then exactly. Went to go teach English overseas instead. Right?
Who would do that?
Who crazy people? But so how much does a priest make per year? Can you give us a ballpark? Is there different wages for a priest? Like there's like a starting wage, and then like a sort of an upper limit.
So it depends. Some places, some eparchies or dioceses might have that. Ours, I don't believe has that. I will tell you though that there is not a lot of money in the priesthood, but at the same time though, a lot of things get covered. I mean, I'm living in a house that I did not have to buy. I'm not paying rent in a house. I do get a travel allowance or whatever, so that it goes towards, well, nowadays it doesn't go towards much, but it goes towards gas or insurance or repairs or whatever, things like that and stuff like that. So I mean, there are a lot of kind of perks to it that kind of balance out. So you may not be.
It is your job.
Yeah, exactly. You may not be making a nice, solid 6 figures, but at the same time, I don't have expenses that a lot of other people do have. So like I said, it balances out. But it's it's right now I'm happy where I am with that. Would I like to make more? I'm sure everyone will always like to make more money, but right now, I mean, especially being in a pandemic and being out where I am in such a rural area, uh, I don't need much. I don't need a lot more.
So how does a
I don't
priest make
have.
more money?
Sorry.
How does a priest make more money?
Like when they want to? Is that what you're asking?
Well, if you said if you'd like to make more money, it's like, well, are you wishing for more people to
Oh,
die for the funeral services, or more people to be born, or a combination?
no,
I
no, no,
mean,
no. I'm
how
saying
does this one work?
I'm saying like if my wage was higher, like I'm
Right.
saying if the wage was actually increased, I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure everyone would love for a wage increase, but I mean that's another thing. I mean you do earn a lot of stuff from funerals, weddings, baptisms, whatever,
Yeah.
liturgy intentions. There's a stipend for that, and so you do, like I said, you get your wage, but then you also get this added on, and you get this covered, and so like I said, it kind of does balance out at some point. But still, I'm not living a luxurious life. I'm not impoverished here and having nothing, but no, everything's good. So
Now, are you supposed to? I mean, because isn't it? Well, I guess it's being a monk that you take the vow of perpetual poverty. But like, as a
right,
priest, I don't think you are. Like, you don't. It's not part of your job description,
correct.
basically.
So monks are the ones who typically take their vow of poverty and stuff like that. Regular priests like myself, we don't take vows. But we are encouraged to how would I say it, to live a simpler life.
Okay.
Well, no, because I mean we're called to be like Christ, and
Yeah.
Christ was not someone who lived in a mansion and had the finest clothing and everything like that. Like we should be like who our leader is, and so I mean, does it say we shouldn't have nice things? Well, no, but maybe we don't need top of the line car or top of the line this or whatever, so yeah, like again, I
So
don't
if
go out spending tons of stuff.
if you were to live in a community wherein the people around you, your congregation, your parishioners were all making eight figures and they all had Lamborghinis, would you be obligated to have a Lamborghini?
Well, I would never, but no, I don't think so. I mean, for me, if it were just kind of my call on things, I would say, at the minimal, I would want to at least appear proper.
Right.
I don't want to be wearing worn out clothes or dirty clothes or whatever, something like that. I would want to look professional, and but at the same time, I would not want to be like, okay, let me just pull out this wad of cash and pay for my car. Like
Right.
I would never want to do that. I would never be wanting to flash things like that. But like I said, I think my minimum would be I would want to look presentable and at least have stuff that I could do my job on. So like, for example, I've got two cell phones.
There
One
you
is a
go.
parish phone. One is my personal phone. But I'm not paying for that whatever multi-$1,000 iPhone, top of the line thing.
iPhone 12
Yeah,
with the purple design.
yeah, iPhone 12 plus or whatever. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm not, I don't own that. I do have what I'm on right now. I have a good MacBook Pro, a new one that I actually just got. But it's something that I use all the time, especially right now. I'm doing Zoom meetings on it. I'm doing video editing as I do video presentations and stuff on it. I write homilies, I do research on it and stuff. So, I want something that works and that's reliable. So, again, kind of you spend money where you need to, but I don't go over the top with things.
That's a tool of the
So,
trade now, the tool of modern trade, I would say. I mean, it's one of those things that
well, exactly.
you can't not have.
Yeah.
You can't not have a computer. Even a priest, I don't think anyone would begrudge a priest a computer and a cell phone. A car,
Right.
and
Exactly.
what type of car? I mean, should be safe, obviously, but I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
How much do you?
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, especially out here, my car. I mean, I'm in my car all the time because I have to travel at least half an hour to all my other parishes, maximum half hour to all my other parishes. And sometimes I'm going down gravel roads and dirt roads and stuff like this. Like, you got to have something that's going to get through that stuff, and it's going to be safe. If it's falling apart, if it's a little car, you're always going to be stuck in. That's you don't want.
Then
that.
you become a liability to the community, and it's no, you don't want to be doing that.
Where's Father today? Oh, he got stuck in the ditch again. Had to cancel another liturgy. But yeah, no, it's but like that's what I'm saying. It's like you need kind of your basics so that you can at least do your ministry and stuff like that. So. Yeah.
So then, wait a minute. Of all those nice things and whatnot, just before we started today, you were asking about what you should wear, and I'm like, well, whatever. And then you said something like, you don't own a collar. And I immediately like, wait a minute. Isn't that like part of the whole getup? I mean, isn't that a business expense the church should provide, or am I not seeing this properly?
So there'll be a little history lesson here. So,
okay.
In our church, in our Eastern Ukrainian Catholic Church or whatever, typically, well, and even if you go back in history, most guys, the collar is a recent kind of invention, and typically, what was associated with the priest was the cassock, or
right.
their Ukrainian, the pidriasa, and so. That should be your kind of your minimum. The collar, I used to know the history of it and kind of where it came in, but it was more, it's definitely a Roman Catholic thing that most Roman Catholic priests or deacons will have. And then other, Anglicans and other kind of Protestant churches and stuff like this, the collar is very common there. But in the East, in the Orthodox Church and stuff, yeah, some of them still wear collars, but it's the cassock that is very common. And so for me, I don't always like tight, stuffy things. So I'll wear my cassock, done up and stuff, but I just, there's no rule that says I have to wear one or even own one. So I don't have one. I shouldn't say I don't have one. I actually do have one. There was one gifted to me. It was a Ukrainian one with the Ukrainian embroidery.
Right.
But like I said, I haven't worn it yet, and like I said, unless I'm told that I have to wear it. But for me, if I'm somewhere where I'm representing the church or doing my job or ministry, I'm going to put on my cassock, and that'll be my formal dress.
Right.
But other than that, I mean, I'm a dad. I have a family. I want to be casual when I want to be casual and stuff like that. So it's like I said, there's no rules saying that I have to. So I'm not in any rush to get one or start wearing one.
Are they very expensive? Like, is there like a church catalog you can like pick out the different type of collar?
They're not very expensive. There are places. There's Roman Catholic places here in Canada that sell them. In Ukraine, you can go to some of the churches. They have sometimes a store that will sell them. They're not expensive, especially in Ukraine. In Ukraine, they are very inexpensive. They do come. You can get them in many colors.
Really?
I have a friend actually. They're not
colors?
always just black. Well,
Okay.
There's often I've seen navy blue, I've seen light blue. Nowadays they do tend to get a little more, not so much in the Catholic Church, I would say, but in evangelical or Anglican churches or whatever. Sometimes younger priests or pastors or whatever might want to have maybe a pink shirt or a purple shirt or something like that. So it would be just like any guy wearing any other shirt,
Right.
It's just adding a color to it nowadays. I have a friend who got a shirt in Ukraine, and it's not like a regular colored shirt. It's actually like a polo shirt. And so it's got like kind of like that cotton kind of feel, and he can undo it to look like a polo shirt, or he can button it up and put his collar in and call it a day. So which if I were needing one, I would probably go with that because like I said, I like to be comfortable and stuff, and Exactly. So,
Now, can anyone
but
buy these, or do you need like a special? Because I know like Manitoba teachers, they have that card that gets them a discount, or like I mean, there's like
yeah,
certain drugs you can't buy, right? So as a priest, you have to
right.
flash a certain, yeah, I'm part of the priesthood.
No, believe it or not, I think most places anyone could buy it. I actually had someone ask me that once, maybe about a year ago. I think someone was, they're not Catholic or anything, and they got their license to marry people, and they were doing someone's wedding, and they wanted to do the look. So they were looking to see where they could buy a collar because they were an ordained minister, and I said, well, like, saw them. I'm sure you could probably just go on Amazon and find it, but yeah, I mean, there's anyone could buy it. So
Well, well, I'm probably because justice of the peace, right? Because in Canada, you can be
yeah,
given the legal right to marry,
right,
join someone in partnership. But I mean,
yeah.
what the Catholic Church does the Catholic Church recognize those marriages?
Not no, not really. No,
Not
they will.
formally. I mean, it's if you met them on the
Yeah,
street, they wouldn't be throwing holy water at them. But I mean, in
right.
terms of
Yeah, they will.
church
They'll recognize
political,
them in a relationship, and they would try and encourage that if they were wanting to be, fully part of the church, that they would have to get married again, as
right.
a church wedding. So yeah.
Is there a lot of that though? I mean, like where people are not joining the church but becoming either justice of the peaces or they're getting married through other just the government office downtown basically. Is that happening more and more?
Yeah, I would say that is happening a lot. Even not necessarily like my own personal friends, but people that I know of my kind of generation, give or take a few years here and there. That is happening more and more. Even people that I know, maybe grew up in the church their whole lives, and they're just opting out. Sometimes it's a result of, maybe the other half of that relationship,
Hmm.
that call is being made. But I mean, it's also just, I think people are kind of moving away from the church more and more, which unfortunately, excuse me, is happening. But uh, yeah,
The
it's
church has been
hard,
getting
but
a bad rep, though. The mass media has been,
for sure,
and
exactly.
I would almost lump that in together. I don't want to say the word Trump here because then all of a sudden people are like, oh, you see, it's the same. It's not. I mean, the mass
Yeah,
media presents a very one-sided view of the church. And
right.
I was going to ask you about this because like in the modern day we do see less people in church. But you're saying in Europe these churches are still very active. I mean, is the church
Well,
is the church still relevant? I mean, is it as a place to go? Do you have to go there not even every Sunday? But I mean, is it one of these things where is it more of a faith? Is it a personal choice? Is it
right.
something else?
So there's, again, my answer is going to be, it depends where you are, who you ask. I mean, even if you go to places in Europe, if you compare them to North America, yes, for sure, they are full churches.
Yeah.
But even if you look kind of at a shift in Europe itself, you will see that it is dropping.
Mhm.
So maybe instead of, a church of 2,000 people, they've only got 1,000 people now. Whereas for us, instead of 500, it's only 100.
Yeah.
So there's a much bigger difference. You can see it physically. So that's what I'm saying. Like it doesn't look like it's dropping in Europe, but I know it is. And even one of my classes in university in Ottawa, we kind of talked about this shift of Christianity of, for centuries, where did all the popes come from? Where did all the priests come from? They came from Rome. They came from Italy, kind of that area there in general. And now, I mean, even looking at our current pope, where is he from? He's from South America,
Right.
uh, where there is. I couldn't. It blew my mind. There is a place somewhere in Africa. They have a seminary with like something like 2,000 seminarians or something like this. It's crazy amount, and there's still a shortage of priests, and they have that
Where?
many candidates. somewhere in Africa. I'd have to find the book that we read it in and stuff. But it's mind blowing that is a shortage of priests, because the shift has gone as we noticed. It came from kind of Northern Europe or whatever, and it's slowly shifting down. So now it's Africa, the South Americas, where this faith is kind of exploding again. And so, I mean, even in North American stuff, you see it dropping and stuff. It's actually a geographical kind of shift. And and I said, well, if you've got 2,000 priests and you're short, well, then you should come to Canada and see that we have like 10 seminarians, and we're actually doing okay. But it's that's the thing, is that the shift in their faith has gone from again, you look at Europe, you look at some of the kind of like the Scandinavian countries and stuff, where faith is there, but it's also the church and state thing is very much being separated. I mean, I don't think you can go anywhere now where there is heavy church and state close.
Oh, yeah, it's not PC anymore.
Exactly, everything is separated, and because of that, and it's just, worldviews everywhere are changing. Even, and I don't really want to get into it, but I mean, even just gender stuff and identities and stuff like that is having a huge impact. And again, if and I don't want to get into that, but
well, and
a church that turns people away, quote unquote, that's going to turn people away, and they're not going to be wanting to come in. And I'm not saying that the teachings have to change, but there has to be a mentality switch. There has to be some kind of acceptance that is going to draw people in, and until that happens, things are still going to keep dropping.
Right. And see, I guess where I would go with this is that is it the church as the organization, the building that the image that's conjured up in mind, or is it the faith that has dissipated, that's disappearing? I know like numbers are down in churches, but are people not believing in God, in a God, in the God? I mean, is it like that has humanity moved on to the next higher evolution of whatever we're going to evolve to?
No, that's a good question. I mean, I personally think a lot of it comes with a lack of education.
In what way? What do you mean by lack of education?
Lack of education in terms of what the church is, what we teach, what we are. I recently, I've had people ask me this question kind of in a different way before, and even just my experiences out here is that years ago, decades ago, we had this kind of mentality that priests would teach, well, you got to go to church or you're going to hell, or you got to do this or you're going to hell. You got to,
it was that was the teaching
gloom message.
Yep,
exactly. And well, you got to go to church every Sunday. Well, why? Because you got to go to church. Well, why? There was no answer. There was no, and I'm gonna say, our parents' generations and so forth, they just did because that's what you did.
Yes.
There was no explanation why. There was no teaching why, and even the things that you did do, there was no, no one understood the liturgy. You just did the liturgy, and so I think that kind of education needs to shift. And so someone was asking me about this, and I said, I don't do doom and gloom. I will say, yes, there are punishments or whatever there's a result for doing bad things or whatever. But my main focus is love. I want to preach love. And that we have to, at baptism, we put on Christ. And what is Christ? Christ is love. God is love. And, we have to learn to love everyone and kind of all get along and stuff like that. And then, like I said, I'm not saying we have to change our core dogma or teachings that have been there for centuries, but the focus of how we say it or what we teach has to shift. It has to go away from that. You done bad, you're going bad. You have to do. You just have, yeah. The whole kind of mentality just has to shift of what faith is, and there are some faiths, there are some churches that do that. I went to a Mennonite school, a Mennonite high school, and they did a lot of mission work that I was part of it, and their kind of outreach and their whole outlook on society and life was exactly that: doing stuff for others, loving others, serving others, and you know what, their churches, I don't know if exactly they're growing or not, but they're not exactly shrinking as small as some of our own churches are. And I think that's because of their mentality of it. They're here to serve and to serve our Lord and serve people and love them. And if we can all do that, then I think, yeah, we could get people back in and stuff like that. So that's what I'm saying. It comes with a certain type of education of what is our faith.
Yeah, and the media hasn't played favorites to the Christian church in the Western world has received a very bad rep, and there's any number of stories. And I know I was on Twitter just recently, and the feedback I got was just like, it was negative. I'm going, is this? Yeah. That's one part of it, and you can't hold the actions of one or two or a few against the whole thing, and it's like blame. I know that's what companies do. That's what social media does. That, and you said it at the beginning. There's only so much you could say before, like, as in this coronavirus. Like, if all of a sudden the Rossburn Church was like, well, we're going to hold in-face church meetings and everything, the church would be like, what's this guy doing? So there is sort of an organizational responsibility to hold the line, sort of thing. But the media representation of church has been negative for a very long time. I wonder if that's more just because some artists in Hollywood had a bad experience, and maybe the devil in metal sells more than love everybody. But it really sounds like you said just love everybody. Whenever I describe like the idea of the church, I'm like, it's being nice to each other. Doesn't sound like a very bad idea.
Exactly.
And it sounds like, what most business people who are part of successful businesses, treat your customers well. I mean, serve them well. It sounds like a typical business, basically.
And I mean, even in that kind of sense too, I mean, even just our own communities is like, not just, okay, we want to serve the poor, we want to help those who need help or whatever, but our own communities, we need to get along too. We need to love our own people that sit next to us in the pew and welcome them into the church. Or if someone new comes into the church, welcome them. Don't just be like, oh, who are you, where are you from? Like, you don't belong here, you're not one of us. Like, we got to get past that. We have to really become a community that's one and that gets along with each other. And I know there's going to be there's going to be differences here and there might be the odd fight, but sometimes I've seen where there's been like decade-long divides in communities, and it's like, no, you got to get past that. You got to get back on track, because that visual, if someone comes in and sees, oh, well, if they can't even get along, then why am I here? Like, I don't want to be part of this, even that will affect others, so. One
question I get, and this is like, my mom would even sort of say, Stephen, this is why you aren't, she has a view of what I am as a Catholic now, and I think I identify as a little bit differently. Basically, since I don't go to church very regularly, I mean, I'm not part of the church, and that would be your sort of old world mentality. I know, Mom, you're still young at heart. That's fantastic, and I love you. But like, when I talk to people here in China, and when I when I meet other people traveling, there's two things there. Like, one, you said about the knowing about the service, like understanding what's going on over there. Right. As a traveler, we go to different ceremonies all the time, and we sort of go, oh, look at what they're doing. But when you are exposed to the Catholic Church service all the time, you sort of lose the view that it is actually a special service. And it's very similar to a Buddhist service or Islamic service. And if you don't understand what they're doing, yeah, you're going to be very like lost, basically.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
also with that, when I hear, and one of my neighbors is Christian, she says, like, yeah, I go to church. I'm like, what? Why? And I'm like, you have a master's degree, you're educated, you speak English, which means she is educated, she's lived overseas. I'm like, how can anyone
Yeah.
in this modern day and age believe a lot of the teachings that the Bible puts forth, and sort of like that doom and gloom aspect that you were talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I hear a lot of, like, where how in the age of science, how could anyone become Christian, become a priest, become why would you go trust the church when we can trust science instead?
Right. And for me, I mean, yes, there's a lot of that, and I mean, the important thing too is that the church can still get along with science. Is one important thing. I mean, yes, we believe in doctors. We believe in modern medicine and stuff like this. We all use it and stuff like that. Like we definitely recognize science. I mean, science is still a thing from God. But at the same time, there's still so much though that I mean, for me, there's stuff that science can't explain, and I don't have to be a scientist to know that there's stuff that I can't explain with science. And there's no other thing that I would use other than that it's God. Or sometimes even just this feeling, like I mentioned earlier about being out here. There's so much beauty in the nature and stuff like this, and you take a step out into a completely quiet place surrounded just by crickets and birds and stuff like this, that that's the only sound you can hear there. I can't help but feeling kind of in a presence of God because of that beauty, that natural beauty. And it's things like that. One year at Holy Eucharist in Winnipeg, I remember having this feeling of like how small I felt, but how important I felt at the same time. I think it was Christmas Eve, and I remember sitting on the altar, or like on the pew there, and whoever was preaching their homily. It was late at night. I started daydreaming a little bit at the icons and stuff. And I remember just looking up into the dome of the church, and it's not that high of a church or that high of a dome, but I just remember feeling like that dome was like the hugest thing, the tallest thing, and I was like this little important thing sitting at the bottom of it. And I mean, I can't even fully explain it, but it just, you could feel God's presence there. You felt him working there somehow. And like I said, there's stuff that science can't explain. One of the things I've heard recently was about in the Old Testament, we had all these prophecies and all the prophets that brought them and stuff like this. And a lot of it had to do centered around Christ himself. And someone actually went through everything and calculated everything out and said, the odds of all of those prophecies being told and everything all coming true were astronomical. Like, no way in any world would that have all come into perfect alignment. If you'd ask someone to do like the odds on it, like no way that could have all happened. And I mean, that thing alone was like, you think about it, you're like, wow, like, yeah, like there was hundreds of prophecies and all these things, and then it all came to happen, and every single one of them were executed or whatever. And it's like the odds of all those coming into play, I don't know. There's got to be something else at work there.
So then, would
And
most people that in the seminary, are they of the view that the Bible, whatever it says, like in terms of the prophecies, and then they happened? Because I approach the Bible whenever I hear someone reading the Bible.
right.
It's like you have to take it in historical context. You have to understand that it went through generations of copying, and there was errors all over the
Yeah.
place. There are
Yeah.
books that weren't included in the Bible as we know it, and it goes back
Mhm.
to politics that you mentioned before. So,
Yep.
I mean, you're talking about an organization that basically has formed over the last couple thousand millennia,
Yeah.
but very much is steeped in the cultures of like going back into the Jewish tradition, which would sort of where, a lot of the whole history of the Western religious faith that we know it today
Right.
it goes on for thousands of years. I mean, I look at it that way and go, well, is the prophecy, first of all, I wonder if they got it right the first time, or was it the second draft that they got it right? Which sort of like, then is it a prophecy? But then
Yeah.
also with that, you go, okay, is it just because that didn't happen, or is it the idea, someone had the idea of whatever prophecy, and then a
Right.
student of these prophecies tried to make it happen?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, we definitely know. I mean, we all do uh, biblical studies of sorts throughout our time in seminary and stuff like that, and yeah, we know that especially when you look at the epistles, you know, as much as they say they were all written by Paul, or even the
Oh,
Gospels were all written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John,
right.
not necessarily 100% true. Or maybe it was someone dictating it, but someone else was writing it, and so there are, we know that there are. It's not perfect, and I would say we're not of the sense that here's the Bible and it is completely 100% true word, and that is what we have to follow. We know that it's written by man. Yes, we believe that it was, guided by God and by the Holy Spirit and things like that. But you're right. There can be discrepancies here and there and differences, and I mean, even if you go by translations can
Oh,
really affect that.
because most people read it in English, and it wasn't written in English.
Exactly, and even the English, there's good English, and then there's bad English translations, and so if you're, depending what you're reading, I mean, yeah, you could have total different interpretations of that. But it's I would say, you have to know what you're doing and how you're doing, which is one of the things, I mean, they teach us. I had one prof that he did all of the kind of the New Testament stuff, all the New Testament books and whatnot, and I will admit I did terrible in his classes, but I have learned, but I learned the most and remember the most from his classes, because his main focus was not that I memorized all these different things, but that I knew how to, I don't want to say how to look things up, but how to use those things properly. So, especially, using context, for example. One of my favorite homilies, I mean, I haven't really done the full cycle quite yet of all the liturgy or all the readings and stuff, but one of my favorite ones that I've now preached on a couple times is the story of the hemorrhaging woman who reaches out and touches just the edge of Jesus's cloak and is healed. And I love preaching about that, because I put it into that historical context, and I say, look, this wasn't just about a woman touching Jesus' cloak and being healed. Like this woman, she in Jewish culture, she was unclean, and so she shouldn't have been touching anyone, because then they would have all had to gone and been, rightfully cleansed and stuff like this. She was also a woman touching a man's cloak, which she was not married to and had no relation to, so she shouldn't have been doing that either. And she was risking everything. She could have been put to death for what she was doing. And then that's why Christ is like, well, your faith has healed you. Your faith in doing this, your courage in doing this has healed you. And so I love getting to put it into that context of like, well, we have to understand why this story is important and what the significance of it is. It's not just a woman reaching out. There is a big hurdle for her to do this. She had to have a lot of courage to do this. And I mean, that's the same thing. Even, we look at the epistles. A lot of people will say, well, this doesn't apply to us. We don't worry about circumcision anymore and all these other things and stuff like this. And it's like, so why do we still, well, because you can interpret it into a modern context sometimes, and the context may be different, but the lesson is still there. There is still something that we can learn from the Gospels and the epistles. The Old Testament, that gets a little more confusing, because that's there's not well, I don't want to, like, there's not necessarily lessons there, because sometimes they are just stories. If you ever go through some of the books and stuff, there's sometimes where there's just pages of whatever, and you're like, why is this even in here?
Like the isn't it the lineage that they go through, and you're going, do we need this?
Yeah, exactly. There's some stuff that really, you're like, okay, well, why is this there? But there was an importance at the time, and so it's still there. But yeah, like I said, there's still lots that we can learn from it, even if it's not 100% whatever. I mean, even the story of creation. Okay, there's those who say yes, it was exactly 7 days, 24-hour days.
Yeah.
Well, maybe, or maybe it was 7 days of some other time. I mean, when was time invented? How can you measure that, and how can we be sure of that for sure, and things like that. So, I mean, yeah,
it sounds though that you are much more of a modern product of the times than some of the teachings that we grew up with. And because I remember, like, in my early years, it was like you just didn't question what the priest said. It was like,
right.
That was sort of like, he is a man of God, he is a man of faith. You don't. That's the authority. You don't confront authority like that, which.
Right.
I don't know. You don't see that. Good luck with trying not to confront authority these days. I mean,
Exactly,
being in a position of authority and not being confronted. I mean, social media has basically the internet has basically taken down those barriers, which I think is a good thing. It does. You said that you had a course in how to deal with communication, like how to deal with certain circumstances.
Well, we've had, like I said, not necessarily a course, but in our rector's class, like the in-house ones, we've had some presenters that have come in to kind of give us, like, we would do sometimes a day-long session or something like that, where they were kind of an expert in the field or whatever, so they would talk to us about, like I said, there was one that we had, he was an actual counselor, and said, okay, well, like, yeah, you're going to get people that come to you with suicidal thoughts or marital problems or whatever, this disorder, that disorder, whatever, and how do you deal with that? How do you handle those situations and things like that, and how what don't you say in those circumstances? So there's things like that of how to deal with different realities, especially nowadays. I mean, our world is full of mental health issues, and even just the idea of mental health is such a prominent thing in our society now. I mean, and priests 100 years ago, priests today don't have that training. Even myself, I'm worried. I'm thankful that I'm kind of in small town, but I'm worried if I go to a big city or something like that, I'm going to be sitting there in confession or something one day. I'm going to be caught off guard, and I'm not going to know what to say, what to do. We one important thing that we were taught is that when it is something serious, because we aren't allowed, because of the seal of confession, to kind of discuss it outside of that, is to encourage people. Okay, can you come repeat this to me after we're done here, outside of confession? Like, if it's someone who's should have professional help because of they're threatening their life or something like that, you have to kind of find your way around that so that you can get out of that confessional and maybe phone 911 or phone their parent or something like that, or so that you can even just discuss it with them outside of the confessional.
So how do priests deal with that? In terms of, because you're going to hear a lot of shit in your life, man. I mean, your confessional. I mean, you're going to hear stuff that most people, like Google, wouldn't even be able. Google would flag most of that stuff probably. And you have to deal with it as a human being, and this is sort of what I see a large role of the church, the people who run the church, not the church as a massive organization, but the people behind the
Right.
church, that they will be that human face for issues that people can't deal with or don't want to be tracked on Google. I mean, it's going to be human
Mhm.
counseling in a way. I mean, how does
Yeah.
a priest deal with that sort of, exposure to what humans do?
Um, it can be, it can definitely be hard for sure. I mean, like I said, I'm new at this. I've only been doing it a few months. My exposure to those things have not been as great as they could be. But I know
But
that priests have
you've
had
had
to go.
encounters with people who, like, you're not just, they didn't throw you into the deep end. I mean, you've had counseling from
Right.
other people who've been through this, been in the game for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, okay, again, the seal of confession. So, kind of how you have to deal with that is you kind of just gotta in one ear and out the other. You kind of just take it for the moment of what it's worth, and then as soon as you walk out, it's gone, and stuff like that. But at the same time, you do need to know how to deal with that, because I mean, even a counselor is the same thing. You got your doctor patient confidentiality and stuff like that. You need to be able to somehow unload that yourselves. For us, we can't exactly talk about it. We can't share it. Um, but maybe sometimes there's a roundabout way that you can do that. Or sometimes it's just, for me, I love my Netflix. And so sometimes it's like the end of the day, I just need to turn on Netflix and watch a comedy or whatever, something that is takes no brain power or anything like that, to just kind of filter everything out. Or I love biking. I actually just picked up a brand new bike yesterday, because I haven't had one in probably 15 years. And so I plan to go out and do a lot of biking in the area and stuff, to just let loose, type of thing. Even so, I do my typical schedule on a Sunday is 3 Sundays, or sorry, 3 liturgies in a Sunday.
Right.
And so I my Sundays are actually like a full 8 hours, because I often start around 8:30, and I'm not back home till 4:30. And so, but often, especially when I'm Russell is the furthest there. It's about a half hour, 30 minutes back home. And I will just then, especially in the summer now coming out, I'll like open windows, I'll turn on the
Oh
AC,
yeah.
whatever. I will crank the radio, some music on and stuff. And I mean, you might sometimes see me just either drumming along or singing at the top of my lungs in my car as I'm flying down the highway. Again, that is my, like, okay, I've just had this solid 8 hours of being with people, of praying, sometimes hearing confessions in those times, having to preach and everything. And it's like, okay, now I just need to, like, click, turn off my brain for a moment, and just like relax and breathe. And so things like that are very important. We kind of talked about that actually in seminaries, that sometimes things like that, they can have negative impacts. A priest could either turn to smoking or drinking or whatever, and that's how they cope with things. And
Which is
uh,
sort of the stories of the old days. I mean, why is
yeah,
father still drinking? I mean,
yeah, exactly. There's a lot that goes on in your day-to-day stuff. Hearing confessions and stuff can be very hard, and stuff like that. So it can be difficult, and you need that healthy release. You need that healthy way of dealing with those things. Because if you don't, then yeah, it's going to have a negative impact on you for sure.
so then, okay, you've just heard confessions, and being with 8 hours, being with people for 8 hours. I'm not a priest. I can't do that. As a human, 8 hours of being with people and at all talking with any sort of brain power, I'm like, it sounds too. I'm trying to do less with people. I'm not gonna lie. I'm trying to be a bit more, let the
Yeah.
service industry be for the younger crowd. I'll be the cranky old man. But in terms of, like, so you hear confession, you've had your 8 hours of work, then what comedies do you laugh at, and what music are you listening to on the way home?
Well, for me, for music, I mean, I have a very wide range of kind of genre preferences. I grew up listening to a lot of classic rock and stuff like that. So sometimes that is great. I love Genesis, the band, Phil Collins and everything, and so there's great music in there. I have satellite radio in the cars, so I mean, I basically can have my pick if I want. Um, a popular one for me, and I know whatever some people might judge me or whatever, but the Pitbull station is one of my favorites.
Pitbull, the rapper.
Yeah, well, yeah, the pop artist and stuff, because he. I mean, it's not just his music, but I mean, sometimes you get a DJ on there that does like an hour-long mix or whatever.
Right.
And for me, I don't listen to lyrics all the time. It's usually just
Oh, come on. Yeah, Mr. International.
Well, you don't know, but it's like sometimes I just love the beat, the music, and it just whatever. Like I said, you'll see me drumming or whatever along the way, and or bop and dancing, whatever, and it's stuff that just makes me move. I love music. I love dancing. So anything that kind of gets me going like that is going to be good for me.
So it'd be more pop music, or would it be more rock music? I mean,
well, pop and rock, like I said, for me, like I said, when I said about Genesis, I grew up listening to a lot of that kind of stuff. My dad had a great ear for music and stuff. And I noticed the kind of stuff that we both liked a lot wasn't necessarily your regular songs, but like stuff that had, well, in that day, a lot of synthesizer stuff or symphonic kind of accompaniment and stuff like that. So, like there's especially Genesis, they were very big into the synthesizers at the time and stuff like that. And I'll listen to a 10-minute song that they've written and a whole range of emotions and everything, and you got slow parts and high and low and quick parts and dramatic parts and everything, and like I love that kind of stuff, and I just love following the whole kind of story arc in a song, type of things. So yeah, I mean, I'll pretty much listen to anything.
But the go-tos are
very,
Genesis
very
and
little that
Pitbull.
I'll switch. Exactly. I'm definitely both an old soul and a new soul. So
what about comedies? You said Netflix. I mean, what makes a priest laugh?
well, again, I might get judged on what I do enjoy or watch or whatever, but right now on Netflix, I'm going through the one comedy, which is it's called Superstore. It's basically based in like it's based in like a store like Walmart. It's called Cloud9.
Okay.
But it's basically just based on the employees and their day-to-day life. It's a really nothing show. There's no real storylines to it at all or anything. It's just a regular comedy. But sometimes the jokes and the stuff that go on there are very funny, and like I said, it's a good release. But I also love my dramas. I will say my all-time favorite comedy is MASH. I grew up watching MASH.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I have them all on a thumb drive. I have all the DVDs. I have everything. Now it's on Disney Plus. So I don't even need all that stuff. But that is definitely one of my favorites. But like I said, I love drama and action too. I binged watched The Blacklist on Netflix.
Okay.
Which is a really good show. It's a guy who was on the FBI top 10 wanted list, and he basically turns himself in so that he can work with the FBI while still carrying out his crimes and stuff. Yeah. But that was a very good show. I recently did. They're on the third season now, but there's only 2 seasons on Netflix of New Amsterdam, which is a medical show. New Amsterdam Hospital, which is supposed to be the oldest public hospital in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And they get a new medical director who wants to kind of change the system, change how everything works. And his big tagline is, "How can I help?" And so his first day, he fires an entire department of doctors and things like this. And it's great because he's trying to think outside the box and really change up the system. And I said, that's kind of like me. I not that I want to make big waves, but
yeah, I was just gonna say, are you trying to change the system?
No, but I want to get people thinking outside the box and thinking of new ways to do things and stuff like that. So that was a good show. But like I said, comedies are a favorite. I did Modern Family was a good one. I did the whole series just recently. So
wow, okay,
yeah. Not that I have all that much downtime, but it's
well, it sounds like you do, because like I'm just thinking, like I haven't. I think the last series I tried to get through was Declassified. The Black Files Declassified. It was it's about this former CIA guy who talks about all like UFOs and stuff like that. And I've always loved that stuff, the whole UFO aliens and things like that. Which I was going to ask you another question related to God, and we'll get back to that. But so there was that I watched last night. 2 nights ago, I was trying to watch a movie called Druk. Drunk, I guess would be what it's translated to. It's filmed in Amsterdam. Recommended to me by a guy I work with, and basically it's a movie. That one's a movie about this history teacher, high school teacher, who basically is boring, like your typical boring high school teacher. And then he goes out to a birthday party with some colleagues, and they're like, "Yeah, we've heard that no one likes your class. Well, maybe why don't you just start drinking or something like that?" And he starts drinking, and his life gets a lot better. Now, the whole premises of it is that the reason why they're drinking is that they can only drink during their work hours. So because they're trying to do an experiment of like from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. they have to get their blood alcohol content up to 0.5%. Based on this idea, like they have a philosophical conversation about why humans' blood level, alcohol level is that high. But then it changes about halfway through. They try to up the stakes, and that's where I was like, "Nah, this is becoming just drudgery drinking. This is I don't know. I didn't finish watching the movie. Actually, I fell asleep before I finished it. But that one, and then the only other one I watched Family Guy on a regular basis. That's my go-to humor. I mean, talking about what makes people laugh. That show cracks me up. That's my mash. If there's a show that I will always laugh at, it's Family Guy. And the only other documentary I've watched recently was Trafficked. But I mean, these things have taken me weeks to get through. I think I watch an hour of TV every couple of days. I don't know. It's not very much. Recording 3-hour podcast doesn't help for media consumption.
Hey, it's something to do. Yeah, no, and mine, like I said, it's not so much that I have an abundance of free time, but I'm, especially if I do like, half hours, I could easily sit down for an hour and a half. You knock off 3 or even you could sometimes even squeeze 4 in there, really. And next thing you know, you're already a quarter of the way through the season or whatever. So it's, and it's mostly in the evenings, time when the kids are in sleep and stuff like that. And like I said, with the way things are right now, I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. Especially we just got through winter. You can't. Now I'm hoping to do, like I said, more some biking and stuff like that outdoors. But especially during the winter, there wasn't a lot to do out here, and we didn't know anyone. We couldn't get together with anyone, so you end up turning to Netflix or something like that. So
or 3-hour podcasts.
I have a puzzle here, so I did start doing puzzles. But
my sister does puzzles quite a bit.
Nice, yeah.
Which puzzle are you working on right now?
This one, do I still have it here? Yeah, I have the box right here. One sec. That is a gift, and it was a memory of Ottawa. So it was Parliament Hill.
Oh, wow. So, okay, this is like a 2D. It's just a sheet, like your normal.
Yeah.
It's not like a 3D replication of
no.
Parliament.
I used to do those. I used to do those when I was a kid.
Yeah,
which were lots of fun. But no, the fun thing though is I'm colorblind, so doing something with that much color in it, like clouds and water and stuff. It was a challenge at times, but I think it's mostly done. There's only a couple little spots that need to finish up, but it was good. So
I think
something to do.
the last puzzle that my sister did with her kids were it was a black puzzle. It was all black.
Oh,
And which you kind of wonder, you're like, that can't be that hard, but then you're like, wait a minute, it's all black. You're piecing those things together. It's a lot of trial and error.
I actually saw it was Heinz Ketchup, I think, that put out a ketchup puzzle, and it was all red. And I said, that would be fun. But yeah, it would be. I said for someone who's colorblind, it would either be super, super difficult or it'd be really easy because you would just be focusing on the shapes and stuff like that. But something like that would be quite the challenge, I'm sure.
So then, with all, I know it's getting late. It's you guys. It's almost your bedtime, if not almost time for morning matins, as the clock goes. But then, so my one question actually that I want to ask someone, you, or if you want to defer it to someone else who's more qualified to answer this question.
Okay.
But as Elon Musk propels us to the stars and Trump almost exposed the Galactic Federation or whatever is going on, what if one day in the very soon future, very near future, let's pick the date 2063 because that's what Star Trek picks as when the Vulcans come to Earth after they fly the whatever it is. What if it turns out that an alien species lands and goes, "Yeah, hi, we're God"?
That is a very good question. I don't even know what I would do. To be honest. Well, 2063, yeah, I'll probably still be around.
That's 42 years from now, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'll still be around for sure. I hope.
I plan to be around for another 100 years or so. So this is very much a relevant question for me.
Well, I think, for me, I'm not going to lie, I probably wouldn't believe him. I would be very interested in it for sure. But you know what? The thing is, when I was younger, that kind of stuff was really interesting. But nowadays, I don't know. I feel things like that get harder and harder to believe just because of the technology that we have, I mean, even we have people that question the authenticity of a squirrel popping up in front of a camera and getting the picture at the right moment.
Right.
And it's like, so how can we not question the authenticity of some blurry lights in a photo that we can't even decipher anything on, so it's like things like that. I don't know. I feel like it's getting harder to believe just because we can do so much. I mean, even if we look at our movies and stuff nowadays with CGI and whatnot, the possibilities are endless. And so I would be interested in it, but I would have a hard time believing it's reality just because of our world. We can do almost anything now. I don't want to say we can do anything, but we can do so much more than we could have done. Even 20 years ago, we can do so much. So it's
would it change your faith at all, do you think? Would it change at all any of your teachings, your belief?
On a personal level, I would say still no. I mean, if for whatever reason it were to be deemed 100% true or whatever, then I wouldn't question my faith, but I would question maybe some of the teachings or whatever, just because of none of this was ever mentioned. We talked
you missed this chapter, guys.
Exactly. But we have we talk about the creation of night and day and the world, the oceans, the plants, the animals, humans. We talk about all this stuff, and we hear about all these creations and things, but nowhere did we ever talk about anything the skies or the heavens and stuff like this. And so it's, I don't know. It would definitely, something would change. I don't know what it would, but I would definitely, like I said, I would be intrigued. And like I said, if it turned out to be true, there would be some questions for sure, because like I said, there was never any mention of it, of anything like that, so how do we deal with it now? What do we do now?
I wonder. I'd probably say that your job description would change. That would probably, they'd have to update it a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. that would be fair. I would definitely have an influx of questions coming my way. That's for sure. So
Yeah. This isn't. I mean, to sort of smooth this over. It's not. This is not odd. This actually was brought up in the mid '90s. I don't know if you've ever heard of the books "Conversations with God." This was.
Yeah, familiar.
Literally
with them,
25 years ago. I remember this because there was two major comments made in that book. It was a series of books. I've read the first 1.5. The third one gets really thick, and I was like, eesh. And as far as I know, I think he's Protestant. Not that it's supposed to matter, but it's not the Catholic Church, which, I mean, we haven't talked about the different denominations of churches and belief, or of the Church of Christianity, but he mentions two things. One, that God is everything. There can't be anything not God. It's just impossible, because if God is everything, it's everything. And as a result, that it's couched in this: you will understand God when you understand that Hitler is in heaven. Like, he is with God because he cannot not be with God. That's existence. And then the other thing is that he does talk about aliens and the stars, and God says, well, I can't tell you everything. I have to let you discover this for yourself, because it's part of the evolution and the growth of humanity. You have to take those steps. Like, we've already taken the Hitler step and going, that's not how you deal with things. That's not what, I mean, everyone basically agrees, nope, bad idea. Moving forward, how you deal with the massive global exposure of, we fought each other geographically and religiously, but then all of a sudden someone comes with a spaceship who makes our technology look like a joke. You go, okay, now you're on. What's the story? What are you going to do? How do you play that game?
Yeah, and that's I would say that's a valid point, because I mean, even if we look at sort of creation and everything, it doesn't tell us exactly what was all created. I mean, we're still discovering species of bugs and animals and stuff like this that have never been discovered before. And you're right, there's tons of stuff that have not been revealed to us yet. I mean, even in our own lives, would 12-year-old would you have ever imagined that you would be doing a podcast in China right now with a priest that you knew from years ago? Like,
I would have been like, what?
Exactly. Things get revealed to us over time, and as we grow, as we develop our own selves, and that's true. I mean, our world is no different. I mean, things are going to get revealed to us as society grows, as our world grows. And I mean, who's to say that there isn't? I'm not saying that I'm a firm believer that there is life out there somewhere, but I mean,
I am. I believe there's aliens.
There we go.
And I'll tell you why. And this is, if someone were to ask me that, and they were charging any man of faith, like if we were in the room, a third person came in and said, nope, you're wrong, Christianity's bad, I'll be like, it's not incompatible, because as you said, not everything was laid out blueprint-wise. But if an alien species showed up, I'd be like, okay, but if you're God, where did you come from? Like, that, the idea of God hasn't changed. Like, I mean, you've stated that you're God, but we have someone else who said that. We have people on a daily basis saying that, but we still say, if you're human, you have a birth and a death. So then where does that come from? The second thing with the whole science argument, as you said, we're discovering insects and things like this, and this whole coronavirus thing has made it very clear that science is a word that's being changed, and it's used to agendify a lot of things. And it bothers me to see this. And I, as an art student, I have a healthy skepticism towards scientists. I'm like, if you don't know the answer to this question, then you can't tell me we have to trust the science, because that means science can change and it will change.
And that's a very, I would say that's a very valid point, and I wouldn't say I agree 100%, but I totally know, but I totally understand.
Which parts don't you agree with? Which parts would you say, agnostic? You're nope, off your rocker.
I don't know just yet. I'd have to get back to you on that. But I mean, you raise good points. You raise very valid points. That I mean, even like you say, if a scientist can't know everything, then how are we to trust that? What gives you that authority to say that, even, and I mean, I agree. I think COVID has taught us a lot about that stuff. I mean, even like I said, even these restrictions that we have here in Manitoba, people are hating on whatever, the doctors, the premiers, whoever's are making these calls. But again, I mean, at least in my perspective, at least the doctor who does these reports, he at least has more background or more knowledge than I would ever have. And so I'm going to trust him more. And just like he might trust me more on something I tell him in a homily or whatever, we're all going to be a little bit more knowledgeable than the next person because of what we've studied or whatever. So we're going to have a little bit more authority, but we're not God. We're not going to have the ultimate authority on things and know everything. And so, yeah, I mean, it's like I say, you raise good points. It's very, very valid points. I'm not going to discredit things.
Well, if the aliens ever did show up, and you mentioned about the feeling, I think that would sort of be your telltale. You wouldn't, if that is the case, then you would have more of a feeling than anything else. You wouldn't be able to fight it. It would just be like, oh,
yeah.
It would be a change of understanding your life. It would drastically change. I think it's going to change anyway. But yeah, no, I absolutely believe aliens are a thing, that they will be here, that we should be working towards a unified world in which, when we show up to the Galactic Federation, like they're not like, they didn't. Oh, who would let them in? Like, it was so nice until they should. We should not be. We should be aiming to be higher.
In that thing called the universe, that atmosphere, it kept them in there. What happened?
Yeah, we don't want to be that guy at the party.
and like, I wouldn't say I firmly believe that there's nothing out there, but like, I'm not gonna say that I'm not open to the fact that there might be, but I'm not a firm believer that yes, there for sure is. If there is, cool. Let's learn. Let's see. Let's let's explore or whatever. And if there's not, then well, there's not. It's something that if it happens, it's going to change the world for sure. And if it doesn't, well, then we keep going on, and there's going to be conspiracies for the rest of our lives.
What if they did show up and start saying the Our Father? Like, wouldn't that just shut up a half of the world? To be like, oh, so you mean it's an interworld faith? Like, snap, done.
That would be interesting. That would be very interesting.
I mean, you could take it both ways. Like, okay, so there's one idea, like they're declaring themselves to be God. There's another one to say, no, we are of the faith. Like, we have the same faith. And like, it's the same for any world religion that all showed up. And like, it's an interplanetary idea that of a faith, love people and treat them with respect.
Yeah, exactly. That would be that would change a lot. That would really change a lot.
Oh, I think we could go on for a lot more, but I know it's getting late. We'll leave it there. Unless, like, do you have anything else that needs to be declared that you'd want people to know, as a takeaway from this?
Not really. I mean, I know one of my biggest things for me was, people often. I had a lot of mixed emotions and reactions when I would tell people that I was wanting to be a priest. I had a lot of people that were really excited. I had people that questioned it. People that were, surprised to see someone quote, this day and age, to be like, oh, that you're actually following that or whatever, So, but I mean, I guess that just shows that, I mean, whatever we want to do, we can achieve it if we work hard and we get through it, and then that's exactly what I did. I followed this my whole life. There have definitely been times when I've worked my butt off to get there, and there's been unhappy times, unpleasant times for sure. But I mean, whose life is completely perfect like that we have those. I mean, everyone's gonna have those moments, So yeah, I'm happy to be here, and I have zero complaints of where I'm at. I'm just excited to finally be here. I think my only complaint would be I would wish this pandemic would be over so that I could fully get immersed with the ministry and everything. It definitely is putting a damper on things at the moment, but yeah, I mean, I would love to. I can't wait to get more active, more involved with things and stuff. So, but yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for taking a lot of your entire Friday night to talk with me today. I appreciate it.
No worries.
I think people are going to love this. It's been a fantastic few hours.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot.
Yep.
We really have.
For sure.
But I think this is a good listen for anybody who's out there who has any sort of question. And I'm sure there's young people out there too who are going to listen to it. I don't know. Do young kids listen to old men talking on podcasts? Old men, not old. I mean, we're middle aged, I guess, at this point, aren't we? Upper 30s.
Yeah, I guess so.
Upper 30s. Hipster millennials, right?
Yeah, I'm still low 30s. Keep that in mind.
Oh, okay. So there you go.
I just entered the 30s, so.
Yeah, absolutely. So if people want to get in touch with you, how can they follow you, get in touch, ask more questions?
So I mean, of course, I'm on Facebook, so they can always find that. Our parish district is also on Facebook, Rossburn. .ugcc, and yeah, you can search us on the web, everything like that. And I mean, yeah, you can message the Facebook group, you can message me personally. There's emails all around there that you can find, so just search. Just like everything else, search my name or search the parish, and you'll find all the information there. So yeah, I'm, like I said, I welcome any kind of conversation or any kind of question. That's actually one of my big things right now that I'm trying to start up is a Q&A with Father Jay. I'm encouraging people to do that learning about their faith. Submit questions that you've always wanted to ask, and we'll answer them. So, yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much, Father Jay Korban. And
No
I didn't open it with it, but Christos Voskres, because this week,
yeah.
this weekend. Yeah. This weekend is the Ukrainian, the
old calendar, the Julian
calendar. Because I was talking to my Russian teacher last night who lives in Ukraine, and she's like, "What do you mean it's not Easter in China?" I'm like, "Oh, lady, first of all,
the world is not Easter right now."
No, it's not Easter today. But if it was, I think the Chinese Catholic Church or the Christian Church would follow the other calendar, the new calendar.
Yeah.
So they would have celebrated at the beginning of April, not this one, the Ukrainian calendar, as I call it. But
yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good night. We'll talk again.
Thank you for having me. It was awesome doing this, and I look forward to hearing more from you. So,
cheers. All right. Thank you very much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
No problem. Yeah.
And that was episode 24 of my podcast. Thank you very much for taking the time joining me today and Father Jay Korban, talking about a lot of things, religion and faith-based, and also growing up around Canada. Jay has been around in Winnipeg, Ottawa. He is a new priest, and I'm excited to see him taking on the life of a man of faith in the Ukrainian Catholic Church. So it'll be great to keep in touch and see how things develop, especially in this day and age. I think we do need a little bit more people who are rock solid in their faith and in their ability to be approachable and have these conversations. So I hope you guys got a lot from it. And as always, I'll have the show notes on my website, stevensersky.com, episode 24. Shoot me an email, troll me on Twitter if you have to, join the club. But yeah, if you need to get in touch with Jay, I will put his contact details on the website as well. All right, thanks for taking the time. We will talk again. Bye-bye.